Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Green Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1143 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news that Estonia seized another Russian Shadow Fleet vessel carrying oil, and also China has now violated Taiwan's territorial waters yet again, and also U.S. officials pressure Putin to end the Ukraine war extremely fast, by the end of the month, actually. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear significant news from every single corner of the world that has been of a significant note, as we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation has been slammed with significant attacks over just the past few hours, as air raid sirens sounded in most major Russian cities throughout the southern region, as it does appear that the drone attacks are attempting to hit Russian military assets and wartime production abilities that are helping the Russian Federation to continue to fight the war. Not only that, but we've also been able to hear that Estonian authorities have seized another Russian shadow tanker vessel today near to the coast of the Estonian state. We have been able to hear that that ship is now impounded inside the port of Tallinn. And it does appear, at least at this time, that the Estonians may commandeer the vessel and operate it as an Estonian-flagged tanker vessel into the future. We have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is having a very difficult time on the front lines today, as Ukrainian forces have been able to continue their offensives inside the Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar directions, taking small amounts of ground, and we've also been able to see that there is now an increased tempo of combat activity, at least according to video and picture evidence, inside of the city of Torensk as of today. Not only that, we have also been getting news on the major U.S.-Russian diplomatic developments over the war in Ukraine and where it's going here in the future. It appears that the United States of America is starting to show a great lack of faith in the Russian Federation and their ability to agree to any kind of a ceasefire, as we've now heard that the President of the United States stated today that if there is no ceasefire that is to be agreed upon here soon, they will begin major sanctions by the end of this month. Not only that, we have also been able to hear that the state of Ukraine and the United States are involved in mineral deal negotiations again, as the Woodgolf delegation arrived in St. Petersburg and spoke directly to Vladimir Putin just hours ago, with the diplomatic conference concluding and a very interesting kind of a map being presented to the public about what the future of Ukraine could look like in a possible peace arrangement. It doesn't really appear that that will be followed along all too much. We have also been able to see that a Russian spy ship was spotted off the coast of Ireland today inside of Irish waters, and we've also been able to hear of hostile military actions being conducted by the Chinese, violating the sovereign waters of the nation of the Republic of China near to the area of Kinmen County Island. We have had an absolutely pretty large amount of news today. It's actually quite a significant amount, and I gotta tell you, Matthew, we are going to be getting into it tonight. It's going to be a good show. That's
Man, I'll tell you what, there's not a single day these days that goes by that something is not happening crazy, either on the trade side of things, on the military side of things. There's always something going on these days, so people can't let it rest anymore. It's got to be something.
And it's always got to be something, as they say. It is something indeed. And moving on into our major news of the day, we have been able to hear that Estonian authorities seized a shadow tanker vessel today that was being operated under the flag of Djibouti, but it appears that the vessel was not registered in Djibouti whatsoever, according to authorities earlier today. We were able to hear and see that Estonia was able to approach the shadow tanker, the Koala. I'm calling it the Koala because it seems that that's the only way I can pronounce that name, but the vessel Koala was heading to the Russian port of Ust Luga, sailing near Estonia's territorial waters. At the time of the seizure, there were 24 third country nationals on board. The captain is a Chinese citizen. The rest are likely from Mauritania, according to Post Times. We've also been able to hear that marine traffic data shows that the Koala, a crude oil tanker, sails under the flag of Djibouti, but a Djiboutian official stated that the vessel is not registered in their system because it does not have that booty. Estonia exercises right to detain the ship for inspection. The head police and border guard, Viko Kumasar, confirmed the tanker is under sanctions. We have also been able to hear at this point that the tanker is now impounded inside the port of Tallinn itself, as we were able to confirm this on naval charts and maps, showing that the Koala is right outside of the port of Tallinn and apparently has weighed anchor, as Estonian authorities have now impounded the vessel effective immediately and are now beginning an inspection of the vessel and will most likely seize it. This is also a couple of pictures of the Koala as well, which is the crude oil tanker in question. This crude oil tanker is one that has been a part of the Russian Shadow Fleet for some time, operating under the flag of Djibouti. This vessel has largely transited to Ust Luga several times, loading up on sanctioned Russian oil and shipping it out into the open market. While the Russian Federation really cannot count on these voyages anymore to produce the kind of whopping amounts of cash that they were here recently due to the rapid drop of the prices of crude oil, these voyages are still incredibly important in raising funds for the Russian Federation's nation and government to be able to fund the war in Ukraine. The port of Ust Luga is also a major strategic site and is one of the largest oil ports in the world, specially made for the onloading and offloading of crude oil and other kinds of refined fuel products. From what we understand, the Koala was largely a crude oil trader, which is once again a fairly interesting thing because this seizure of this vessel is coming at a fairly rough time. The Russian Federation Shadow Fleet is somewhat small, at least in comparison to the original non-sanctioned fleet that they had operating in the world before the war in Ukraine began in 2022 in full, and the massive sanctions made it impossible for Russian oil tankers to be able to conduct their typical voyages. These vessels are smaller in number and are able to get less Russian crude oil out into those open global markets where Russia and the Russian government can make some money off of it. This means that this vessel being impounded is a serious blow and another critical loss to the Russian financial apparatus that has helped them to be able to keep the war going financially for several years. And not only that, it's coming at a time when crude oil prices are continuing to fall. And I'll actually show you all that right here as far as the crude oil prices are concerned. We have been able to see that in general, crude oil prices are hitting the absolute bottom of the barrel quite literally and have stabilized around $60 per barrel. That is in comparison to just about a week ago, the prices were around $70 a barrel, and over the course of the entire last 6 months, you could see that the average price was somewhere around $60 a barrel. This is the absolute lowest that it has been over the course of an entire year, and it appears that the Russian Federation would need the largest amount of shadow tankers possible possible to be able to conduct these significant voyages across large distances and to be able to make sure to get the most money possible and to ensure that the crude oil that they've been pumping out of the ground in Russia has a customer to be sold to. That is not going to be the case, or at least it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get the sheer volume of crude oil out there into the open world, because it once again is seeing that more of its shadow tankers are being seized. This is a very similar story that we saw to another vessel that was seized inside the Baltic by the Federal Republic of Germany, which would have been the Everton oil tanker. The Everton oil tanker was a larger vessel, as a matter of fact, and let me go and show this to y'all really quickly. Let's see, the Everton. We want the Everton with an I, not an Everton with an O. This is, oh, actually, it's not the Everton, it's the Eventon. Right there. This vessel was seized by the Germans a little while ago after its engine stalled. It actually was a shadow tanker, and due to the fact that the vessel's engine stalled and it was inside of German waters, the German government boarded the vessel, impounded it, and then seized it and began to operate it as a German-flagged oil tanker for the Federal Republic of Germany. This is
that's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like the Germans just took that vessel and started using it as their own. That's kind of wild in itself. But also, did the Russians ever claim responsibility over this vessel, or did they kind of pretend like it wasn't theirs and they just kind of let it fly under the rug or under the radar?
They pretended like it really wasn't theirs for the large part. I think there was a protest made, but it wasn't an incredibly strong one or a large one. And for that reason, we saw that they just, really got away with commandeering and running a Russian shadow taker pretty much indefinitely at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy they just took it, but, good on Germany for just doing that and getting away with it.
Yeah, so now the Estonians are most likely going to be doing the same thing, because they're going through the same process the Germans went through to get this sweet little gift, the Eventon. They are now going through the same thing with the Koala, which is currently moored right up here within this area near to this inlet. We are believing that in the future, the Russian Federation will have to admit that these shadow tankers are operating as a direct extension of the Russian Federation and its economic needs, because with more and more of these vessels continuously being seized inside the Baltic, and the Russia's ability to transport their crude oil to markets continues to diminish, they will have to largely be forced to come out into the open and claim that these vessels are theirs, and that any further actions will lead to reprisals by the Russian Federation against the European states conducted in these seizures. Nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the seizure of this Russian vessel by the Estonians today, and are wondering, will the Russians be forced to respond to this yet? Some people are saying that the Russians will pretend like this is not really theirs, and they'll just move on from it and not really talk about it. Others are saying that the Russians will respond to Estonia. Others are saying that there's a 50-50 chance, and some others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this right now, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 54% of the audience said Russia will pretend like it's not theirs and will not respond to it, while 28% said yes, Russia will respond to Estonia, and 13% said there's a 50-50 chance of it. And of course, I think there's a pretty big difference between Germany or Estonia. Of course, Estonia is one of those Baltic states that Russia does have the ambition to one day invade and take over and put into the Russian Federation. So that is a little bit different on that front. And of course, the German military is a lot stronger than the Estonian military. So that's also another big difference. So I would say that Russia, if they were going to respond, it would be a response to Estonia and not Germany. And once again, this could give them an excuse to actually do an aggression toward Estonia. So I have to see how this goes. I think Russia might actually respond a little bit more forcefully to this one, because they can't afford to have all of their Russian oil tankers seized by foreign countries like this repeatedly, because they're already having a big enough issue selling the oil. And now they're even not going to have even tankers to actually transport the oil either if this keeps happening. So I think they probably will respond to it. So I'm actually with the 28%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think for now the Russians are largely going to pretend it's not theirs. I actually would be with 53%, because while this is greatly diminishing, again, their ability to get their oil out into the open market, accepting that these vessels are actually operating as a part of the Russian Federation's economic extension or wing would largely open up every single one of these vessels to clearly be in violation of sanctions, and then these vessels could be seized by literally anyone anywhere in the world as sanction dodgers, meaning that the entire Shadow Fleet could be jeopardized surprised if they start to publicly admit on an official level that these shadow tankers are theirs. It is a commonly known public secret that the Russian Federation is operating as a shadow fleet, and we pretty much have an entire manifest of these vessels and where they are in the world and where they're operating, but the Russian Federation has never officially recognized these shadow fleet vessels as operating for the Russian Federation or Russian-based companies in their profit-making ventures. If the Russian Federation's government came out and said that these vessels were operating in that capacity, it would become obviously clear to everyone in the world that there would be a clear justification to seize the remainder of these vessels because they are openly violating the sanctions by attempting to work around them and stating that these aren't Russian vessels, these are just vessels of various different countries that happen to be commissioned by Russian oil companies to pick up their oil from Russian ports and then go sell Russian oil elsewhere, clearly violating the sanctions. So I have a feeling they're going to ignore it, but if this keeps going, I think their hand is going to be forced probably several ships down the line to try and do something about it, because if they don't, either way, they're going to lose the shadow fleet. It's either going to be very slowly or it's going to be rapidly once they admit that these are actually working for Russian oil companies and their entrepreneurial ventures around the world. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And also, I see some people asking, I've seen this a couple of times actually tonight, and I was actually getting a kick out of it. Some people are saying, where are the viewers? I don't know. I actually don't know. Matthew, we were talking about that at the start of tonight's stream when the countdown was going on, when our mics were muted and y'all couldn't hear us. We don't know what's going on. Like, I was asking Matthew, is there like some sort of like a big football event in America today going on or something like that? I was like, I don't really know. Because yesterday we had a record viewership, I believe, of nearly like 11,000. Yeah, it was nearly 11,000 people on. And at this point last night, we had about 9.2 thousand people on, and tonight we only have 6.6. I think a lot of people may be on a holiday. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a little bit interesting to see. But we don't know. Beyond that,
it's kind of weird. I don't understand it either, because like you said, last night was like crazy viewership. Like we almost set a record last night actually for this same point in the year last year. The viewership was crazy high last night. So now it's kind of crazy low tonight. So I'm not sure. We're like on a roller coaster, kind of like the U.S. economy right now. We're going high, low, high, low. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but it's certainly interesting.
Some people are saying Coachella. I don't know what Coachella is. It's a major music and arts festival held in California. The festival has grown substantially over the last decade, and in 2012, it begins today. Well, Matthew, it looks like we got our answer. It appears that everyone's off for Coachella, it appears.
Does everybody leave for that? I thought that was something just like a handful of people went to or something, to be honest.
I'm guessing that would be it because it starts today. Also, it's spring. It's the beginning of spring break as well.
Oh, okay. Now that would explain it. Coachella, that's really not plausible, but maybe the spring break, that would probably be it.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on with that tonight because I was like, wow, the viewership is low. Like it's not really low. Like still 7,000 people being on the stream by YouTube standards is pretty big. I mean, we're getting close to that point to being in the top 100 live streams in America even still. But it's a little bit weird to see it because it's like, what in the world? It's like, we went from just over the past days, honestly, ever since I came back from Seattle, every single stream we've run has had well over 10,000 people live watching them. And tonight it looks like we might get into the 7,000s if we're lucky. So that was a little bit interesting, but still, very, very interesting thing to note, the decrease in viewership. Beyond that, though, as far as we're concerned, it is a normal day on air. It's just that I saw enough people bringing it up in the chat. I was like, you know what, we'll address it. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword. One, it's kind of sad to see that we don't have, the massive crowd that we usually have here watching the stream. But two, it does make it a lot less stressful on us because we don't feel like we're having to, perform for a crowd of like 11,000 people or so that are on live at one moment. So a little bit easier for us. But moving on from that, and on, also some people are saying spring break where? I'm guessing spring break in the United States. I really don't know. We kind of live in a hole. Like, I get out and see sunlight maybe an hour a day, and beyond that, I'm just like working nonstop on this or something else. So I generally don't get to get out a lot or really know what's going on out in the world beyond, what's right beyond my nose, which is my work. So I wouldn't know. I think it's spring break in America, maybe. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the rest of our news, beyond just speaking about the side note of where is everyone? like honestly, that's kind of a big question. But moving on from that and on into the rest of our news, we did also get to hear that apparently there has been some significant comeuppances in the Russian Federation due to significant Ukrainian drone attacks that are once again occurring right now. We have been able to hear that throughout Rostov-on-Don, Kursk, and Oryol, air raid sirens have been sounding as massive Ukrainian drone attacks were occurring over the past few hours, and it appears the Russian Federation was pretty much having to send everyone down under the ground to be able to prepare for what was going to be coming. We were able to hear air raid sirens sounding in each one of these major cities. For example, here are the air raid sirens sounding in Oryol.
You gotta love that sound. The sound of living in Russia. Would
Dude,
you rather deal with tornado sirens, or would you rather deal with the air raid sirens? I'm not really sure.
Dude, right now, man, the Russians are confused. They're like, either it is Ukrainian attack or Ramzan Kadyrov's men just enter town. And everyone's getting a warning. Like, it's one or the other. And a very ominous noise, but once again letting us hear the sounds that the air raid was going on over Oryol, and we also were able to see that there was an air attack going on in Kursk as well. Alright.
Nothing, блядь.
Well, the car alarm went off. Oh, a little boom.
Honestly, the most exciting thing in this video is the swinging like watermark. Honestly,
Man, they got that. Got that thing swinging. Well, we'll just leave it at that. It's just like I don't know where to go with it. Man, I was about to say, oh man, they got it swinging like hot dog man's nuts over our hometown. Oh man.
No.
But I was like, I'll hold off. And then I was like, well, now I gotta let folks know what I was about to say. But anyways, moving on from that and down into Rostov-on-Don, we also got to see the long-range strikes going on in Rostov-on-Don. Oh. Bro, we got the hype man. We got the hype man out here. He said, yo, yo, yo.
man, that guy sound like he's speaking a different language than Russian.
Долбите по нем, долбоёбы.
Bro, this is the hype squad out here.
Все, пошли. Долбите
doing it
по
again.
нем, глянь, он над ними летит, они пусть стреляют.
He acts like this doesn't happen all the time. It's
Ебать,
like,
ты
come
видал,
on, this
кого
happens
видно?
all the time.
Смотри, сейчас пойдут.
This guy's
Dude
on
talks
something.
like that streamer. Yeah, you see like on speed or something.
Oh my god, chat. Are we good, chat? Are we good? I think it's coming in, chat. It's coming in. We're going to get bombed, chat. We're going to get bombed. It's hitting the refinery, chat. Oh my god, chat. It's like, bro, it's like, calm down. Like, calm down. This happens like every other week.
Я, он пошел.
He just keeps saying the same thing. Like, it's the same.
Вон он.
Oh,
Да.
impact.
Уебали, сбили.
Подожди.
А меня камера зафиксировала. Увидел его? Да. Во, пошел. О, пошли.
He keeps saying
Вообще два стреляют. Да похуй. О, пошли, дай. Пошли. Четко, да? И пошли, родные, долбить.
And we hear some air defense fire.
Слушай, это какой уже третий? Он пошел.
Very light air defense fire.
Yeah, nothing really heavy.
Все, слышишь? Кто-то уебал.
Just some machine guns and such.
Он пошел.
Also, apparently, Matthew, someone said that the Coachella stream has 112,000 live viewers right now. So I think that might actually be where some of the viewers went.
Yeah, it could be, actually. That might explain where a few thousand went.
Yeah, I don't think it was a little thing, like you were saying earlier. I think that sounds like a big thing.
It's not big to me.
Yeah, because we're real players. We bring in that kind of viewership, like, like once in a century. Like honestly, like when Israel attacked Iran, we got like halfway there. That was a very interesting time. That was an interesting time to be on YouTube when that was happening. But nevertheless, we were able to see that significant attacks are happening across the entirety of the Russian Federation, and it does appear that at this point we have not been able to get any damage assessments, but we have been able to confirm impacts of Ukrainian drones onto the territory of the Russian Federation. Once we are able to get damage assessments and also speak a little bit further on the specifics of what that may mean for Russian warfighting abilities in Ukraine and their economic standing, we will be making sure to report that most likely in tomorrow's nightly stream on what actually was hit and what kind of damage was caused by the Ukrainian drones and their attacks that were being conducted overnight. Nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from this little bit of news inside of the Russian Federation and the significant attacks that were occurring there, and we are going to be moving on into something else that's a little bit interesting, at least as far as the attacks that the Ukrainians are conducting on the Russians and the Russians are conducting on Ukraine, and all of that kind of special jazz. It's all overarching. Well, it all has something overarching it, which is this looming American-Russian attempt at a peace negotiation on the war in Ukraine that has been going on for months now, and it doesn't really seem that there's been any progress at all in seeing that a peace negotiation is successfully reached, as the President of the United States is starting to say that they are running out of patience, and according to some information that we've been able to get today, if no ceasefire is reached by the end of this month, the President can move forward with additional sanctions on Russia, either through executive power or by asking Congress to pass new sanctions legislation. A source familiar with the issue told Axios. It appears that the United States government is starting to run out of patience, and it also seems as though they're a little bit shocked that the Russian Federation acts on nothing but bad faith and poor will towards the United States of America, considering that the Russians do respect the United States quite greatly. Not only that, we were able to hear that a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt was made by Witkoff today, the top negotiator of the United States with the Russian Federation. This guy right here, he traveled by private plane, U.S. private plane that is, to St. Petersburg, landed at St. Petersburg. He then had a diplomatic talk with Vladimir Putin. Once that talk was concluded several hours later, he then left. But we are understanding that this is one of the last-ditch attempts that's being made by the U.S. government right now to try and create some sort of a peace deal, hell or high water. We really do not know how desperate or how hungry the U.S. government is to try and force some sort of a peace deal, but it appears that the Russians are not willing to bite at all on anything. Even if it was pretty much an absolute victory, then they would start to demand Eastern Europe as well, most likely at this point. Nevertheless, the United States government was able to get something out of Witkoff and Kellogg, and this was a little bit interesting. We call it the Kellogg-Witkoff plan. It's kind of like the Mason-Dixon line, but somehow even worse. This is the Kellogg's vision of a post-conflict Ukraine. And it's an interesting one. I want to clear...
Wait a minute. This Kellogg is suggesting once again, Kellogg's the one who was removed because Putin believed he wasn't pro-Russia enough, so he got removed as the envoy, to my understanding. So now he's suggesting that they divvy up Ukraine and partition it. Wait a minute, like Berlin after World War II. Is this serious? Is he serious about that?
Oh, it's quite serious, but there's a little bit of an interesting caveat. This map makes it look a lot more stark than it really would be. The entire areas in blue and yellow would be controlled by the state of Ukraine entirely, but British and French peacekeepers and nobody else would be allowed in this area in blue, but not in the area in yellow. But the entire thing is still under the control of the state of Ukraine. So it's a little, like the map makes it look a little bit misleading. This literally looks like Berlin before West Germany was created as a state. Let me go pull up the Cold War Berlin map. Let me go pull that up really quickly because it's a fun one to look at. So you know what? That generally is a better look, honestly, just the map of Germany when they divided up into military occupation zones. That actually would have been during the Berlin airlift, because you can see the air corridors and their way to Berlin and all that. But let's get a normal map. So this is probably a little bit better of a map showing the occupation zones by the British, the French, the United States, and the Soviet Union. And the way that this map was drawn up, it looks almost just like it, honestly. It's just a different shape of a different country, but they almost went for the same thing. But from what we're understanding, the Kellogg-Witkoff plan right now for the future of Ukraine is that the line of contact is where the new border is created between Ukraine and Russia. So whatever Russia has now, they get to keep. And whatever Ukraine has now, they get to keep. But there's going to be an 18-mile deep demilitarized zone extending 9 miles in both directions from the line of contact, where the Russians are not able to put their forces and the Ukrainians also aren't able to put theirs. The Ukrainians will be the only armed force allowed east of the Dnipro River, but west of the Dnipro River, British and French peacekeeping forces will sit there, not in direct contact with the Russians, mind you. That's one of the most important parts of this plan, is that the peacekeepers never actually face down the Russians directly. They're just somewhere in Ukraine. And then they sit there and they say that this is going to be enough to stop something in the future. There are some issues with this. One, the Russians wouldn't even agree to this. Like, this sounds like it's a huge, a huge cave-in to the Russians. The Russians' demands are still so strong, this wouldn't even appease them. The Russians are demanding in control of the entirety of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia oblasts, meaning that the Ukrainians would actually have to give up a substantial bit more of land, including the cities of Zaporizhia, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, as well as the city of Kherson, to be able to appease the Russian Federation and even get to supposedly some sort of a peaceful resolution to the end of the war. Not only that, the Russian Federation is also insisting that the Ukrainians demilitarize and keep a small peacekeeping army that would not be large enough to threaten the Russian Federation, and I quote, again, although they never really threatened the Russians, but apparently to the Russians they can't threaten them again under a demilitarization standpoint. The Russians are also not going to allow any Western peacekeepers or any UN peacekeepers in Ukraine anywhere under any circumstances. So even with this looking like a massive cave-in to the Russians and pretty much giving in to a good amount of their demands, it is hardly scratching the surface on what the Russian demands really happened so far in negotiations, and not even this has a semblance of happening anytime in the future. So don't get concerned about this, because this does look like a massive cave-in to the Russians, and I'll be entirely honest, it really is. But even still, this is so pro-Western, even with it being appeasement, that the Russians still wouldn't even accept it, which really honestly ought to let us know that there's no negotiating with the Russians, because if there is this much appeasement going on and this isn't even enough for the Russians, why are we still even talking to them? That's absolutely crazy.
And also another thing, I'm not sure about the logic of the comparison between Berlin after World War II, because Germany started that war. So they were the ones at fault. They would be the equivalent of Russia in this scenario. So the logic is we're going to go to the victim country and partition the victim and start splitting up that country into multiple spots. Well, it's not the same, because Ukraine didn't start the war like Germany did. So it's like, I'm not sure about the logic behind that. The comparison, now obviously looking at the map, it doesn't look like they're necessarily doing the same thing as Berlin after World War II, but I mean, that's a bad comparison.
Also, it's like with how that was, like you were saying, with how that was working, Germany was defeated, and we were dividing up a defeated state that unconditionally surrendered and didn't even have an existing government at that point, and that's why it got divided up like this. It's like, that's not the situation we're in right now, like you're saying. We're in a situation where the Ukrainian government exists and is fairly strong. It actually is quite unified from what we understand. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to treat them like we're trying to divvy them up and create occupational zones. Also, another thing is that, so out of all the peacekeepers that are going to go, only the British and the French? No one else? Not the United States or Poland or Germany or Italy or anyone else? I mean, it's just going to be Britain and France?
Well, remember, the United States already bowed out of having any participation in this. They said if anybody was going to go in as peacekeepers, which, like you already mentioned, the Russians have already said, we're not going to allow that under any circumstance. Like, no peacekeepers from Europe, America, or anywhere is going to be allowed inside of Ukraine. But if it were to happen, the U.S. said they're not going to be involved whatsoever. The U.S. is not sending a single troop to Ukraine to protect it. It's going to be entirely on Europe to protect Ukraine. So we would have no involvement whatsoever. So that's why you only see the British and the French.
I'm not going to lie. The absence of American peacekeepers seems incredibly weak, like from every aspect. Even when that was originally mentioned, it seemed weak, but seeing it on a map, or the British and the French are the first line of defense and the only line of defense, ensuring that the Russians don't conduct an aggressive act again, and the leader of our sphere, the United States of America, doesn't even have an active peacekeeping force to stop further aggression, that just seems weak. I mean, if we're putting the British and the French in this kind of a position, even in our own formulated peace plan, once again, I got to push forward the idea here. why in the world would the British and French be subservient members of a sphere of influence where they have to send their troops into Ukraine and they are the front line of defense where they possibly might die to defend American interests primarily, but they reap none of the rewards of actually putting up any substantive risk or investment into this? That doesn't really make any sense from their national standpoint. I bet you it doesn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of the citizens of France and Britain when they think about it. We're going to be America's henchmen, pretty much at this point, for their own peace plan that isn't even inherently within our own interests for our security in Europe. And then we're going to have to go over there and put our own troops on the line without any American involvement at all for the peace plan America came up with. It just isn't making a lot of sense. I feel like if this is our peace plan, 100% behind the British and French having peacekeeping forces there, and I think they should be there, but the United States should be there right alongside them. I think that that would make a lot of sense, and I think that the greatest deterrent to future Russian aggression in Ukraine would be having American, British, and French peacekeepers, because all three of those peacekeeping powers are nuclear armed. So it's only adding to the amount of force and the amount of a threat that exists if the Russian Federation was to start another conventional war inside of Ukraine, and they were not only going up against the state of Ukraine, but they were going up against the three nuclear-armed Western powers inside of the country as well. That would generally stop them from ever conducting an attack again. But still, a lot of people have been talking a little bit more about this whole rush to try and get something done, because the President of the United States has made it clear again. And, you know, at this, I'll be honest, he's been a little bit more lenient than I would have been with trying to be hamstrung along by the Russians. The U.S. president has said that Russia must get moving to end the Ukraine war. And will progress finally happen? And it appears that many people are saying that, no, Putin will never really talk. And these the last Hail Marys by Witkoff are going to be just that. They're going to be the last Hail Marys. Others are saying that Putin will be forced to talk. That's a very small group of people who are saying that. And a very even smaller group of people, it's a fraction of a group, are saying that he might with some more pressure. But beyond that, it seems as though people are really seeming to believe that Putin will never really seriously talk about this, and it will have to be a situation that's forced to the table because the Russians will not have any other choice but to talk once their economy and military have been completely and thoroughly destroyed. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 74% of the audience said no, Putin will never really talk, while 12% said yes, Putin will be forced to talk, and 10% said maybe Putin will talk with just a little bit more pressure put on him. And right now, the pressure is certainly on him right now because, of course, the U.S. is threatening to put more sanctions on Russia. They're threatening to ramp up the pressure. So the pressure is on Putin right now. So if he wanted to talk and end this war, right now would be the time to do it before the Russian economy totally collapses. So he's not doing that. He's doubling down. He's going in further into Ukraine and starting brand new offensives and going all the way in. And also, he's not really truly negotiating in good faith. So there's no sign that he's going for peace. And that's been like that for decades now, or years. He's never really wanted peace. He's been going for invading Ukraine for a long time, and he's still doing it years in. So I would say that Putin is never going to really talk. The U.S. president tweeting something out and saying that Russia must get moving after they violated multiple ceasefire agreements that have been reached is honestly not really a strong move, in my opinion. I would say that at this point, it's time for action. The U.S. should sanction Russia even worse, as much as possible at this point, and in the hope that maybe Russia would come to its knees and stop the war. So until that happens, until real action is taken against Russia and they're actually brought to their knees, nothing's going to happen because Putin's not going to talk. He's not going to do that. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree. I don't think that Putin is ever going to seriously talk about ending this conflict at this point right now. While the Russian Federation's economy is in a very tough situation, and while the Russian Federation's armed forces have been ground down to a shadow of their former selves, which was a shadow of its former self during the Soviet era, I believe that the Russian Federation is not willing to talk at this point, and even trying to push forward and rush to find some way to find common ground just isn't going to find it. The Russian Federation has made it clear through all of the peace negotiation attempts that even the United States has had with it under the current administration that they are looking for everything they want and nothing that we would want. There is no middle ground being made by the Russians or any attempts at goodwill or good faith in these negotiations to actually get it moving forward at all. We're pretty much forced to be at an impasse at this point because the Russians don't want to make any kind of common ground with us. Even so, and I gotta say this, like, as far as the negotiations have gone, I do have to give fair credit if we were going off the idea that we we were just trying to end the war. The United States has gone above and beyond in trying to work with good faith towards the Russians to end the conflict, but I think that they ought to learn from this by going above and beyond and getting absolutely nothing of it, ending up in the same place as the last administration, that the last administration was working from a position of understanding that that was what was going to happen if they ever seriously tried to negotiate an end to this conflict. So with that in mind, we have to go with the old saying, play the cards you're dealt. And the United States has no option but to play the cards we're dealt in continuing to support and finance the Ukrainian side of the conflict, continue to drive the Russians to their knees, so that way, finally, once the Russian economy is collapsing, or once the Russian Federation's military is no longer able to even fight hardly at all, then the Russians will be forced to the negotiating table simply to the fact that the war will no longer be sustainable for them, even if they try and force the war to keep on going. I think that probably would be our best bet at this point, because beyond that, I really would have no idea on how to end this war rather than continuing to push it on forwards and hope that our side wins through overwhelming firepower and continuous support from the West. So that would be my take, at least at this point, on how we should be able to run this thing. And I think that would be successful. I mean, the Russians really are in a bad shape right now. And it continuously shows with each passing day, they're getting into worse and worse shape with every passing year. So if we keep it going for another year or two, they will be in a far worse position, if not collapsing by that point. And then we should see that they'll get to the negotiating table and we'll be able to finally see an end to this war. But, you know, once again, the best ambitions of mice and men are proven to not be what the world works on. This is a learning lesson for some, maybe a coming of age story of a sort. But because you want people to stop dying doesn't mean it's that easy. It just never is. And a lot of people always talk about how war is a scourge and people love war, but the reality of the fact is that there are a lot of moving factors out there in the world. And the truth of the matter is that wars will never end. There will always be war. It's just a fact of life as far as living on this planet is concerned and living amongst people. There are multiple different groups. There's always going to be an endless conflict and strife. It is a part of the human nature. Hell, I mean, like a good example, honestly, to give y'all of strife, look at the United States of America just on the domestic political sphere. Historically, it has been endless strife. If it's not one thing, it's another. When the nation was founded, it was the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and it was nothing but endless strife. There was the Whiskey Rebellion, Shays Rebellion. After that, there were other rebellions that popped up inside the United States. There was the abolitionists and the anti-abolitionists. There was the secessionists and the unionists. There were the labor unions and the labor bosses. There has been an endless kind of a conflict over one thing or another just inside the United States domestically. And crazily enough, even in the United States, blood has been spilled at every single moment because of those strifes. Even until this present day, there's still unrest, strifes, and bloodshed that happen in this country over the kinds of unrest of different kinds of groups of people with different kinds of ideas and different kinds of needs going up against other groups inside of the United States. That is just in the United States alone. Now let's look at that on an international level. Much like any political group in the United States of America, or any other group for that matter, even if they're not political, nations are just like those groups inside of America. The nation as a whole is a group with its own particular interests and its own particular pursuits on an international stage. And the Russian Federation, much like us, has their own international pursuits and their own wishes for their country on that international stage. Their views interdict with ours. They're entirely different, and one cannot exist without the defeat of the other. So the Russian Federation and the United States are forced into battling it out in one way or another. The United States largely has the upper hand, and we're able to just get friends because they want to be friends with us because we have a good amount of money. And everyone wants to be friends with someone who has a good amount of money because the money will pass on to them a little bit, and we'll also get some money off of them. It's a win-win. But the Russian Federation understands that if Ukraine does that, the Russians are being shut out of opportunities that they want for themselves that America is now going to get. So we stand to benefit at their loss. That's how they look at it. That's why the war in Ukraine began in the first place, as far as the invasion was concerned, in 2014 and 2022. That's why we're still seeing that this war is being fought to this day. It isn't really a Russian war against Ukraine. It's more so a Russian war against the West as a whole and the United States of America's leadership of that Western sphere at large. That means that their views are different than ours, and there's really no way to do anything about that unless if we're willing to give up and walk away and no longer look out for what's best for us and our people. That's the reality of the situation. If we start to give up and walk away, there won't be any more wars. There won't be any more bloodshed. We'll just give everything away to our adversaries. They will stand to have everything to gain, and we'll stand to have everything to lose. But nevertheless, the only thing that we'll be gaining is that we're not fighting wars, but at the same time, we're going to be losing everything else that has made America worth living in and worth fighting for its entire history because we didn't want to be in a war. That's really the reality of the situation. That's what this is all about. And that's why the People's Republic of China is continuously aggressing against Taiwan. That's why they continuously aggress against India. It's the exact same situation that we find with Russia and America pitted against each other. China and America are pitted against each other in the exact same way. That's how the world works. And that's why wars are not going to end. And that's why saying that it would be nice to have no wars, it's a great thought, but it's never going to work in practice. Because there's always going to be strife as long as there are different groups of people with different groups of needs, perspectives, or goals that they want to achieve. Strife will always be inevitable. So with that, I hope that kind of addresses that well and sort of a little bit of a speech of a sort. But that is why we must fight, and there really isn't a choice. That's why we have to continue to support Ukraine, because at the end of the day, I want to put this out there. This is going to sound selfish, and it is, because it's the United States of America, and I'm an American. America has a lot to gain from this war being won on our side. Russia has a lot to lose from it if it's lost on their end, but they also have a lot to gain from it if they end up winning. I'm here to see that we win. I don't care about the Russians, and I don't really care about their success. I'm not a Russian, and so they're 1,000 miles away to me. I'm an American, and so at the end of the day, the success that I care about is the success of myself and other Americans here in this country. And that means that I have to make decisions, at least in the best interest of my nation and fellow citizenry, that would stand to benefit them more than some other people that are in another country around the world that stand to gain from our loss. So with that in mind, that's why I support Ukraine. That's why we support Ukraine the entire time, because if we win, there's a litany, a grocery list of things that we will achieve that the Russians will lose, and we will stand to benefit from it, and they will stand to lose. So that's what's at stake right now, and that's why we support Ukraine for years. That's also why, just to once again touch on this a little bit on the detracting side for the people who are pro-Russians, that's why I've never understood them. I'm not a Russian, so why do I want them to win? It doesn't make any sense. I want people in another country to win, and I want to give up something that the U.S. can gain that would be an inherent benefit for people that aren't even mine, so that way they can succeed at our detriment. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense from an administrative standpoint. If I was to become the president of the United States, am I going to start laying out a precedent with my decision-making processes that we're going to allow everyone else in the world to succeed, our enemies to succeed at America's detriment? Am I going to put the citizens of the United States of America last in line at every single decision-making process to allow every other country to put themselves up to benefit and reap from their own rewards what America could have done if we were just assertive and looked out for our interests and our allies' interests? That doesn't make a lot of sense at all from a leadership perspective. That's why the United States must work. That's why I state these kinds of things, because we look at it from a pro-American, pro-Western mindset. That's why America must stand up for these interests, because it's inherent to the success of our citizenry that we continue to do so. And so now I'm seeing some people, I see some other people saying, well, what is there to benefit and gain from Ukraine? So much, I'll tell you. Ukraine has a lot of land. And that sounds stupid. It's like, well, duh, it's a country. It has land. But land in itself is a valuable resource. On the very surface of that land, where the land touches the sky, that is fertile soil. There is an endless load of agricultural bounty to be had inside of Ukraine. Right now, that's being exported into third and second world countries, but easily enough so, they could eventually start to transfer that sort of industrialized agriculture into the West and further prop up food security inside of Europe if necessary. A massive benefit for Europe and a massive benefit for us, because the cheaper food is for Europeans, the more money they have to be able to spend on consumer goods, meaning that they will have more money to spend on American goods, or at least American raw materials to produce their end goods. That's a good thing for us, and we want to have that. We want to make sure that the Europeans are food secure. As far as we are concerned here in the States, Ukraine has an endless supply of rare earths. It actually is one of the wealthiest countries in terms of rare earths in the world, and that means that we have an unlimited and boundless supply of these rare earths and rare metals that the United States needs in our modern industrialized manufactories to be able to produce the most advanced and complex systems at a cheaper price, because we're able to access those rare metals at a price so cheap that American goods start to actually become competitive in that regard, making it easier for us to sell our goods and making it easier for Americans to make money, making it easier for Americans to get higher paying jobs. Those are the benefits that we get to stand from it. Not only that, but in the process of doing so, in the process of spurring this economic activity with the Ukrainians that I'm speaking of, both for Europe and the United States, the Ukrainians have a good bit to gain from that as well. They start to make more money because they start trading with Big Papa Dollar here, the United States of America, and also the Europeans. The Ukrainians start to get more money as a result of that, and when they start to get more money, these people start to have dreams, and they start to think of having finer things, finer consumer goods, a nicer car, maybe a nicer house, maybe some form of a TV. Maybe they want to have better medical institutions with better medical instruments and screening. And that means they start to buy these things from us in Europe, meaning that they continue to make more money, and they also continue to have a finer quality of life. That makes us money. So there is a lot to benefit from this, a great deal. That's what's actually on the line here. That's what's at stake. And that's also what's at stake for the Russians. So when we speak about this war, we're not speaking about, do you believe that the Ukrainians had some goofy biolab kind of a thing or anything like that? We are speaking about, do we want to stand to benefit from the whole thing? Do we want the benefits, or do we want to give them away to a group of people that hate us and don't really care for us, and they'll spit in your face once they end up winning? Like, that's what we're really looking at.
At the same time, though, if someone fails to understand the importance of having relations with foreign countries in the world that we currently live in, which is a very globally connected world, it's not a world where isolationism gets you anywhere anymore. If you become an isolationist, you're going to fail as a country. That's just the world we live in. Because, of course, if we leave, let's say we leave the trade sphere with Europe, then Europe will naturally gravitate toward China, and they'll take over that sphere, and they'll get much more rich and much more powerful by doing that. So you can't just leave vacuums. Even in a trade sense and a military sense, you can't do that. So you have to go in with that understanding that it's important to keep those global relationships instead of just crap on them like they don't mean anything.
I would agree. You can't, you like, in the world we live in, and another thing that's very much so supporting what Matthew's saying right there about power vacuums and such things. People say Europe is a leech. Like I want to address this time and time again here in America, because some people in America say that the Europeans are leeches. They've been leeching off of the United States for too long, far too long, and it's been at our detriment. But here's the thing, though. If that is to our detriment, then we should be able to throw away the Europeans, and then no one should want to have any dealings with them. Because if what we're saying is true, who would want to have any kind of a serious relationship with the Europeans where they start leeching off of them? But the thing with that is that while we're trying to cast off the Europeans and largely throw them out there into the world on their own, the Chinese are stepping up to the bat to try and ally with these leeches. So there has to be some sort of an inherent benefit. The logic behind the idea of Europe being a leech on America is flawed, because if it was true, then China wouldn't want to become great friends with them right now. And the Chinese are begging the Europeans to become friends with them. They're going, America's abandoned y'all, they hate y'all, why don't you come over to us, because we would love to have y'all with us. What would China have to stand to gain from doing that? I mean, if these people who are saying that the Europeans are leeches, if they were true, China doesn't have anything to gain from becoming friends with the Europeans. They stand to lose a lot because the Europeans are going to start leeching off of them. So clearly that statement's false. There is an inherent benefit in actually having the Europeans as friends, even if we have a trade deficit with them. And we went over this last night in great detail as far as the economics work. A trade deficit doesn't mean that we're losing money. We're making money. As long as money is moving and goods are moving from one country to the next, we are making money. It doesn't matter if they import $600 billion of our goods into the United States and we only export $300 billion to the collective of Europe. There is still money being made on all ends there. The movement of a good and the purchase and sale of those goods are making money for everyone involved along the way. If it wasn't, the economic ventures would cease to exist. Our GDP would decline. We wouldn't be making money. But we are making money because the U.S. Median income continues to slowly rise. The GDP is skyrocketing. Things in America are looking more economically prosperous now than they did throughout most of our history. And it's because of the major trade relationships that we've had for decades with most of these countries around the world, especially including Europe. So that would largely be my kind of an answer to the detractors who say things like the Russians deserve to win in Ukraine or the Europeans are leeches. Those are really the answers to those questions. If you continue to believe that, I mean, it's a free country, you can believe what you want, but if you start to work off of that and really start to push that, the thing is, man, is that I'm not going to be sitting here and, sitting on my high horse as you screw over the country. I'm getting screwed alongside you. Like, if you're one of the people who believe that. So we don't really have a lot together combined because we're both Americans. We'll both end up succeeding and suffering together. We don't really have a lot to gain from doing these kinds of actions. And that's why, and that's pretty much the big picture on everything going on in Europe right now, as far as an American perspective would be concerned. So I hope that addresses that well. I see a lot of people saying that it was a good speech, and a lot of people are saying that Enforcer explains everything good. I hope so, because I kind of feel like in some areas I was going in circles. But beyond that, I hope that addressed that the best we could. But before we move on from this news, actually, you know what? We'll actually move on from this. We'll actually move into some more news a little bit, considering we're still on the diplomacy side of things. The Germans are making it fairly clear that they don't believe that peace is going to be happening. At least their defense minister, Boris Pistorius, is saying that. Also, man, Boris Pistorius is the most, Russian Roman name I've ever heard.
Man, honestly, I was thinking when you said it, I was like, Boris Pistorius. That's honestly a baller name right there. I kind of like that.
Dude, he sounds almost like Marcus Aurelius or something like that. Man, it's like, bro, he's going to be coming out here running legions. He's not running the German army. He's running like the 40th Legion of the Roman Empire or something like that. But he did state today.
I wouldn't call him like a philosopher with his words, but he's got the point down, Pat, just in pretty straightforward language.
He puts it out in layman's terms, which I respect, because he stated in very short words, we must concede that peace in Ukraine appears to be out of reach in the immediate future. Man, he speaks very eloquently, man. He might be up there with Alexander the Great in his speech to his army as they marched through Persia. But he also stated that, but Russia needs to understand that Ukraine is able to go on fighting, and we will support it. He is a man of many words, but nevertheless, it does appear that the Germans are not believing that peace will be achievable anytime here in the near future, and that is also coming at the exact same time as a Russian spy ship was seen inside of the Irish-controlled waters around their island and was refusing to respond to communications from the naval service, possibly showing that it was attempting to intercept communiques between the Irish government and the EU, or possibly the British government and NATO command or the European Union, either one, because that spy ship was in range of both of them for the large part. But a fairly interesting antagonizing development, or a provoking element of the Russians today, once again near to the area of the British Islands. Meanwhile, we also got to hear back in the United States, as far as diplomatic developments were going, that the United States of America is continuing on with trying to move forward with a new mineral deal. We were able to hear that the U.S. is still talking about it with Ukraine. They've actually been talking about this for a week, but this is an update on it so far. The new proposal has returned to pretty much the original demands, that this be viewed as the repayment of loans on U.S. support that's been given to Ukraine over the past 3 years. Ukraine would have to give 50% of its revenues from natural resource development projects to an investment fund controlled by the United States. The United States would demand all profits from the fund until Kyiv returns at least the equivalent of U.S. U.S. aid received during the war, plus 4% per annum. And also, there's no security guarantees included for Ukraine in this mineral agreement once again. So it
That
appears
sounds like a fantastic deal right there. Just hand over 50% of the revenues, and we'll figure out the rest later. But just go ahead and hand over about 50% of those revenues, and we'll work it out. Don't worry.
This is just returned back to the deal that we said at the beginning was just shafting Ukraine. This is literally the same deal. This is shafting Ukraine. Let me put it this way. Let's speak about this from a Ukrainian perspective. Ukraine has already gotten the $60 billion or so of military support that we provided. Only a few $billion have not been physically sent into Ukraine yet. So most of it they've gotten. All of that was given to them under the concept it was not a loan, and they were not going to have to repay that. And I just want to guide everyone through the process again, and we're going to, waive the no politics, no mentioning of parties thing just to make it very clear here. The Republicans and the Democrats in the Congress, for the large part, unanimously approved most, if not all, of those funding appropriation bills or drawdown bills for the funding for Ukraine. It was almost a unanimous thing between the both parties. They were usually achieving a 70% majority in the House and a 60 to 70% majority in the Senate every single time. That's very rarely achieved on most things in the U.S. government these days. So, with that in mind, that was then signed off on by the President of the United States. So, really quickly, want to clear up the waters here. If people are saying that Zelenskyy came over here to some old, decrepit, senile man and, picked him up by his legs and shook him until the money fell out, that's not the case because the entire Congress approved these spending bills, each and every one of them. That was both the Republicans and the Democrats. The President only signed off on it, and at that point, he's really only signing off on it as a formality because the Congress has already approved it. So everyone was on board with giving them this money, and it was not viewed to be a loan. It was viewed to just be money. They were giving it over to the Ukrainians. It was largely weaponry. It wasn't even cash. They gave all the weapons to Ukraine at that value, and that was that. There was no thought of repayment. Now the United States is coming up. After they've gotten the money is already in Ukraine, so it's not like they're really stopping anything from going over there. The weapons and the monetary support's already been provided for the large part. And then we're going over there and telling them, you're going to repay us now for that when you never agreed to do so in the past and it was never understood to be that way. We're altering the deal. Pray we don't alter it any further. As far as the Ukrainian government is concerned, they're not getting any security guarantees in this deal. They're not getting any promises of future support because there's been no attempt at passing new congressional drawdown bills in the Congress to further support Ukraine. So from what they're understanding right now, the U.S. is leaving them high and dry into the future indefinitely and then demanding that they repay the money we sent already that they already have for the large part with nothing in exchange in the future. The Ukrainians are not going to accept that because if they're already going to get shafted and not get any more support in the future, why would they agree to just giving money to the United States for nothing? That doesn't make any sense.
The funny part is, from the little bit of time and contracts in law school, that contract, if it was signed and done here in the United States between two United States citizens or two companies, would probably be declared invalid because there's not enough consideration on the U.S. side to make the contract valid because there has to be something being given by both sides in the contract. One side can't get something and the other side gives nothing. That's not the way it works. There has to be some type of exchange. So if the U.S. is not providing anything to Ukraine, but yet they want all of Ukraine's or 50% of their money, there's nothing there for Ukraine to even agree to. It's just like, that's basically just saying we're just going to donate this to the United States and that's the end of it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense at all with how that's being structured. It's incredibly lopsided, it's incredibly unfair, and it is shafting them again. It's returning back to the original agreement that they had. I would say that this isn't a good plan or a good move. But we are hearing in the meantime, though, that apparently, according to the prior Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State before Marco Rubio, he actually stated that the mineral deal, at least in concept, was actually Zelenskyy's plan. I have a feeling that this version of the mineral deal was not Zelenskyy's idea, clearly not, but the idea of a mineral deal to secure further military aid was a part of Zelenskyy's plan. So that largely does show, at least according to what the former Secretary of State saying, that Zelenskyy actually had a plan to pretty much repay America for future military support at some point through the mineral deal, while still receiving U.S. military support, meaning that it would be a fair, reasonable exchange, and the Ukrainians wouldn't just be getting free cash. In turn, they would actually be paying back the United States in actual money for the military support that they would be sending. So a little bit interesting to hear that. It actually does show that Zelenskyy was trying to figure out a way that Ukraine could repay in gratitude and also hard cash the support that the United States provided, but it now appears that may have been expounded upon by the current administration in a not so fair way to pretty much try and force the Ukrainians to repay them for the support that was already given to them in the past and pretty much retroactively make it a loan. So a little bit interesting with that, but we believe that the Ukrainians might not accept that, especially if it appears that they're not going to be getting any future support from the United States, or if the United States government does not largely give them any security guarantees in a peace deal. I also do not know what's wrong with giving the Ukrainians a security guarantee, because it's like, isn't that really stopping the Russians from starting another war if we are guaranteeing their sovereignty? I mean, that's stopping every war in the future forever. Why would we be scared of that? I mean, we really want peace and we want the dying to stop. Why are we so scared of the Russians that we would really be so scared of them we'd let another war happen in the future because we wouldn't be their security guarantor? That makes no sense at all from that perspective. Like, you know, we say we want peace and we want the dying to stop because lives are valuable, but then we won't actually put our mouth where our money is and say we will provide them security guarantees because that will ensure that the Russians will never attack them again. Why won't we do that? Like, that's a rhetorical question. I'm sure some may or may not have an answer to that, but why is that the case? That doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint. But beyond that, a lot of people are talking right now. Matthew actually just threw this one up right on time because we're about to start moving on into something else. Do you think Ukraine should pay back the United States for past military aid? And it's a resounding no. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
So about 85%, the overwhelming majority, said no, Ukraine should not pay the United States back for past military aid, while 15% said yes, they should pay it back. And honestly, I would say this: one day, if Ukraine can pay us back, I think they should. That would be the right thing to do because, of course, if they do end up winning the war, it's only because of all the aid the U.S. sent that they were able to pull that off. So I think they should pay it back if they can. But the catch is, though, Ukraine is still in the middle of fighting their war, and their country's been torn apart, and they're going to need all the money they can get to rebuild their country. So to force Ukraine to pay that back right now would be basically crippling the rebuilding of Ukraine when the war finally ends, which would put Ukraine back probably a long time, actually, probably a decade in the rebuilding because they're sort of low on funds. So I would say right now they shouldn't pay it back, but later I would say they should pay it back. That's my honest opinion on it. I know some people are going to be like, "Well, it was sent as a donation." It was. There was no agreement in place for Ukraine to repay anything, and technically they're not legally obligated to repay anything because that was not the original agreement. But if they one day get prosperous, it would be nice of them to pay it back. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that in my honest opinion, I don't think they should repay it back. Absolutely not. At least for all the prior support sent. Here's how it works. Let's explain this on a more personable level. So if your neighbor, better yet, if you're on hard times, let's think about this on a personal perspective that some of y'all may have actually faced in real life. If you're in hard times and you're hardly making the bills meet, and you go and your mom calls you one day and you get on the phone and she says, "How are you doing?" And you're saying, "Honestly, I think I'm not going to be able to pay rent this month because times are tough right now. You know, I got a flat tire. I had to change it. I just don't have enough money." And then your mom goes, "That's okay. I'm going to send you $1,000 so that way you can pay your rent and survive. I don't expect anything back in return. Just take it. Make sure that you're okay." And you go, "All right, well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Thank you." And then you use that $1,000 because you were given it, and you've already gotten it. You've used it. And months later, when you're talking to your mom, she just has a change of heart, and she goes, "You know what, you little shit? Why don't you say thank you, and why don't you pay me back $1,200 for that $1,000 I gave you a couple of months ago?" A lot of people would go, Wait a minute, that's Indian giving. Like, a lot of people would go, you told me not even to worry about it. You told me that it was fine for me to get that $1,000. Don't even think about it again. Just make sure to take care of yourself. And now you're sitting here months later, and you just had a change of mind, and now you're telling me not only do I have to repay you, I have to repay you interest on top of that? That's absolutely absurd. Like, that's absolutely crazy right there.
Well, by the way, just to clarify this, I should have clarified it when I spoke earlier. When I say Ukraine should pay us back, that doesn't necessarily mean like taking out like Ukrainian hryvnias and sending those over to the United States to repay us. That doesn't mean actually like cold hard cash. That means, like, for example, we've been making these donations to Ukraine to basically supply them with weaponry, all the economic assistance they need to win this war. We've been investing in Ukraine's success in the hopes that Ukraine will win the war, and one day they'll be a strong country once again with a strong defense industry, also a strong agricultural industry, and hopefully they'll take care of the United States in return one day when they win the war. That's the way I view the donations. I don't view it as it's just like throwing money into a black hole. That's not the intention behind it. The U.S. always makes these type of donations with some type of purpose behind it, and the purpose is to prevent Russia from invading, once again, countries that are in Europe. That's one deterrent factor, and also another one is that we hope one day Ukraine can one day be a good trading partner with the United States once again. So that's all part of it. So maybe one day they will give us breaks. They'll also be a great trading partner with the United States, and also we can try to make more investments and try to make money in Ukraine, like we hope to do one day. So that's the way I look at it.
I would say so. Like, but the thing is that a lot of people are now going, that's freeloading. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if your kid is out there and they're busting their ass, like, I've never been in this position with my parents, but this is how I view it. If I have a kid and I know I raised that kid well, and they're busting their ass, and knowing how the economy is these days, a lot of kids aren't making it that are like us, that are busting their ass, sometimes working 3 jobs every week to try and pay their rent. I know a good amount of people in that kind of position, and they are having a hard time paying their rent, and you call them a freeloader because you got on the phone with them and you called them and asked how they were doing, and they said they couldn't pay their rent, and you call them a freeloader for that. That's honestly a pretty shitty thing to do to your kid, especially if they're actually raised well and they're busting their ass. Now, if you're hot dog man and you're high on weed all the time and most of your money's being spent getting that extra sticky weed, then that'd be another thing. Then I would say that's a freeloader. But if you're actually out there busting your ass and getting work done and still the bills are too much and you're living just on a ramen budget, and then your parents are going to call you a freeloader for that, that's a pretty shitty thing to do to your kid right there. That'd just be the reality of it. But still, beyond
And
that,
also something else, keep in mind this. The American companies, which once again, the American companies going to Ukraine to set up these future investment opportunities, the Americans are already lining up for the one day when Ukraine does win the war and the rebuilding starts. The American companies have already gone in on the ground level and made large investments and started securing large stakes in rebuilding Ukraine. And that's going to be a huge source of revenue for American companies that are going to Ukraine to help them rebuild. So that's going to be a big return in itself. And also, once they start exporting things once again, presumably, I hope that Ukraine would factor in the fact that the United States has helped them greatly and basically is responsible for the survival of their country when it comes to this support side of things. And they would give us breaks on trade and things like that. Like, for example, with tariffs, maybe there would be no tariffs, maybe. We'd have to see. But I would say, honestly, that would be the best way forward. Everybody can make a little money. Everybody can help Ukraine win. And it's a win-win all the way around.
also, on top of that, another thing is that because you give someone money now doesn't mean that you're expecting an immediate repayment as a result of that. Sometimes you just throw money at something and go, eventually, pay off. Like, eventually there'll be a return on the investment. Like, for example, the interstates. Like, think about this, everyone. When Eisenhower came back to America and he got elected as the president of the United States and he began the Interstate Project, was there really like a direct concept in America at that time that the interstates would actually spurn economic activity and create a load of money? I mean, there was no example of that existed in the United States. Like, sure, it existed in the Autobahn in Germany, but not really to the scale of the United States. And a lot of people could have made the arguments back then that people make for high-speed rail in America these days. Well, Germany's a really population-dense country. It's only the size of Montana with like 50 million people in it during that era. I mean, hell, an Autobahn easily could work. In America, we just don't have the population density for that. What, are you going to build a giant-ass road through the middle of Wyoming for no reason? I mean, no one's even going to use it. That's what people could have said back then. There was no reason for the U.S. government to say, let's just throw money at these giant roads that will cross the country from end to end. And, and it will make money. Like, there was no reason to do that. They could have done the same thing that we're doing with Ukraine now. They could have gone, we are going to build these interstates, but we're going to levy a special tax on every single trucking company in America to pay for these interstates, because we're not going to spend a government dime on something that's only going to benefit big trucking. That would be bullshit. They could have done the same thing. And then everyone would have gone, well, that's kind of stupid, because that's actually in the public benefit. Eventually there will be an indirect return on investment. This is going to increase the size of the U.S. economy, which means that the U.S. government is getting more tax income because there's more money floating around and more economic prosperity. There doesn't always have to be a direct return on investment every time you do something. There wasn't a direct return on investment, at least, when the U.S. just started throwing money at European countries under the Marshall Plan. We threw money at everyone in Europe after World War II. We said, Britain, here's some money. France, here's some money. West Germany, here's some money. Italy, here's some money. We were literally throwing money at people like it was worthless. And we were not expecting repayments on the Marshall Plan, mind you. It was literally just stimulus checks, national form. And it paid off.
Although I will say that the Marshall Plan, it had a lot of the same criticisms that people are making right now about providing more funds to Ukraine without the promise of a payback or repayment. A lot of people were saying about the Marshall Plan that they're wasting money on other nations instead of spending it here in the United States. Literally the exact same argument being brought against the Marshall Plan that's being brought against Ukraine. And generally speaking, the Marshall Plan, like you were saying, was largely considered a large success. And it was bashed to hell and back in the day when that was a thing. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it paid off. It didn't directly pay off. We didn't give it to them as a loan. We just gave them money. Like, we just threw money at them. And because we threw the money at them and they didn't have the burden of paying anything back, and it was just free cash in the tens of billions of dollars, which back then was in the hundreds of billions of dollars, these countries went into what was considered, still to this day, periods that were paramount to economic miracles. West Germany became an economic powerhouse over the next 10 years because of the Marshall Plan. France immediately skyrocketed into an economic glory that hadn't been seen before because of the Marshall Plan. And so did Britain for the large part as well. And because and also Italy to a smaller degree. But because they skyrocketed in economic prosperity, they had more money to spend, and guess what they were buying? They were buying American goods, meaning that we started making more money, and that spurned the cycle. That pretty much got the wheel rolling for it to start picking up speed and taking on off. And that's really a large reason why the United States has a lot of money today, is because we just gave a risky upfront investment with no thought of being repaid in the future, and it paid off big time. Usually when we do that, it pays off big time in most instances, because just throwing, like this sounds a little stupid, but historically, if you ever look at it, there's a good reason to say this. The government throwing money at people and never expecting repayment in a good amount of instances actually ends up being a pretty good thing for the most part. Like, people might not believe it, but it actually does end up being quite beneficial in most instances. So that's kind of what we're doing with Ukraine. It's the same thing. Don't expect an upfront repayment from Ukraine. We are investing in their future success, but that largely requires us to continue to invest in them, because if we stop investing in them, we lose all the money we've thrown at them so far, and we don't get any benefits in the future. If we keep financially supporting them and then financially support their reconstruction as well, they will become a country much like any other in Western Europe post-World War II. Their economy will skyrocket, and we will have everything to gain from it money-wise. Money will start flowing through this country tenfold more than what we put into Ukraine during the war and after the war to rebuild their country. I can assure you that wholeheartedly. But with that, I hope we addressed that well. I hope that explains that well, at least from our logical standpoint with some historical examples. But with that, it is time for us to move on into some questions. And Matthew, what kind of questions do we have? Do we have some spicy ones? Also, by the way, another thing, Matthew, that I was wanting to point out, interestingly enough, over the first hour of the stream, we were only 8,000 views short of last night, which, like, overall views. I think it's an underreporting issue.
Yeah, I think there is an underreporting issue. Also notice the likes as well. The likes are usually, like, it's actually higher tonight than it was last night when we had a massive viewership. So there might be something glitching on YouTube's end, because all of our other stats are on par with usual, if not a little bit higher, like the likes and things like that. So the viewer numbers not adding up for some reason. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think it's an underreporting issue. Remember that happened a long time ago for like a month, like where we would get like 100,000 views a stream, but it would only say that there was like 6,000 people live. It's like it was so
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, I think that's what's happening tonight, man. But anyways, let's get some questions, some real juicy ones.
All right, so our first question here is going to go to none other than Howie, who throws in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Howie, for that 50. And I don't know if that's your first ever super chat on the channel, because YouTube didn't tell me this time for some reason. But thank you very much for that massive support. And that is the largest super chat of the night. And of course, that helps to keep the channel running. Like we say, like a broken record, but it really does. We appreciate it, Howie. And Howie says, why don't the shower heads work right at the Sea to Lake Resort and Hot Dog Man's apartment?
Well, the showerhead doesn't work right in Hot Dog Man's apartment because he's using one of those real special shower heads. Usually has a brick of something stuck in it. But as far as the Sea to Lake Resort, I've never heard of the Sea to Lake Resort. Sea to Lake Resort. Is there really something called that?
I think they meant, from like the river to the sea type of thing. You know, that little play on the Middle Eastern type deal.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, it's not working because they don't have water pressure down there. As they call it, it's a dead sea, so not a lot of water pressure in that thing. Gotta revitalize that sea, man, honestly. Like, they gotta put some, I don't know, some defibrillators on that thing, maybe get it back. I was about to make another joke, but I was like, I don't know if YouTube would like that one. Because I said some phrase that everyone says forever, and then some people were like, what? Yeah, I was like, oh, come on. I was like, that's like a phrase as old as time. But anyways, I'd have to say, I do thank you so much for the support, Howie, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if there wasn't people like you, if there wasn't people like you, Howie, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running tonight. And I also got to thank you, by the way, for being one of our Swiss viewers, because you threw that in CHF, which means it's in Swiss francs, which is, frankly, a very neat currency. Have y'all ever seen a Swiss franc? Like, what that looks like? Let me show y'all.
What's the difference between a Swiss franc and American franc?
Well, frankly, it's the value.
Oh, are you trying to be frank?
Quite frankly, yes.
Well, that's very frank of you. At least it's not like hot dog and the Frankfurters. But tell us more.
But look at the value of the franc, man. Honestly, it's a tough time to go to Switzerland. Because
you know why the value of the franc is shooting up over the last couple of days? Because the U.S. dollar is devaluing over the last few days quite badly.
Yeah, you could tell. That's rough, man. Look at that. I mean, that's practically. Oh man, it was actually devalued back badly in 2011, apparently, according to the franc. But anyways, let's.
That was after the crash, after 2008. The aftershocks were still happening a few years afterward.
We're gonna crush. But me on that. Y'all want to see a Swiss franc? Y'all want to see what a Swiss franc actually physically looks like? Let me show y'all. This is a 10 franc bill.
Why do they write specimen all over it?
Because this is a fine specimen.
I know, right? That's great. Look at that. That's Dix Francis.
Dix Francis?
Yeah, it said it right there. Dix Francis. It's the Banque Nationale Suisse.
So if you walk into if one of those money trucks pulls up in front of a Swiss bank, Matthew, and the bag is filled with nothing but 10 franc bills, I guess that guy's walking in with a bag of dicks.
Oh dear. Honestly, this guy on this money looks like he's judging me, though. He's taking his glasses up and said, "Oh, great heavens, who's this peasant?"
Dude, he's giving you that old Lausanne stare. He's giving you that old Lucerne stare, man. Like, bro.
He's giving me that look like he might be a pretty rich banker or something. And this guy looks like he could be the bank robber. That's just a joke. Just a joke.
Dude, someone's about to But anyways, let's see. Well, what's this fella here? His name is Funizig Franken. And I don't know anything about him, sadly, but he is wearing some kind of a helmet, so that's interesting. But let's see here. Who is this guy? Is that Marco Pierre White?
Kind of looks like maybe Anthony Bourdain.
I didn't make Gordon cry. He made himself cry. That's a choice.
Honestly, it's true, though. I mean, Gordon made himself cry. I mean, he's in the business of doing that.
Who is on this one?
Okay. Honestly, when I first looked up, as I was looking down the chat,
I
thought that was a German painter. I was about to say, is that an Austrian painter?
Man, it failed Austrian painter. But, is that Lenin? That's Tarzan Franken.
Oh man, to the Switzerland viewers in the chat. I mean, what's up with these people on the money? I'm just saying.
Dude, the anti-counterfeiting measures in Switzerland are absolutely insane. Like the geometric patterns and everything all over these bills. I've never seen anti-counterfeiting get this extreme.
Yeah, it's really good. I think the word specimen written on the front is probably their best measure.
No one will be able to copy our currency now. Specimen. It's like, dude, I'm going to open up a clothing brand. I'm going to name it Specimen, man. Like, it's going to have, like, it's going to be like Supreme, but, you know, like clinical. But let's see.
Honestly, man, that sounds like a fantastic idea. I could think of it right now. Just the word specimen, like the lamest, like, font that you can possibly imagine over the front of a shirt in white. That would just be the best-selling thing ever. Sell it for $100 a shirt. And you'll have to after the tariffs get done chewing you down.
Or we're going to have to copyright the hell out of that then. Because, like, because someone's going to use that here soon. But still, it's an interesting currency. It actually is pretty neat. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you all the way from the Helvetic Republic, we would not be able to keep, well, I believe it's the Helvetic Confederation, actually, technically. Let me go pull that up. The official name of Switzerland. Let me go pull that up really quickly. It is technically actually called the Swiss Confederation. I heard that it was called the Helvetic Confederation at some point because that's what's on y'all's Capitol building in, let's see, oh my lord, am I forgetting where the capital is further south. It's down near, it's not Geneva. Is it? It's not, yeah, it's not Geneva. It's not Geneva. Oh my god, am I losing my mind? I would know this on any given day except for today. Are you kidding? Let's go here. Let me just pull up the Swiss Capitol building. Capitol. There we go. Where was it? That is not the Swiss Capitol.
This is a financial institution, and this is in Georgia.
In Tbilisi.
This is not Switzerland.
Can we pull up the Swiss
Bern is the capital.
So I was right at that one search. Okay, so it's looking over the river. So we should be able to find it now. There it is. The Bundeshaus. Well, let's go read.
It's better than the Rat House. I mean, I would rather have this right in the Bundesplatz.
Dude, it's like, what's the difference in between the German government and the Swiss government? You ain't got no rats in the government in Switzerland.
It said they thought they had big rats in the United States in the New York subway, but it's really the biggest rats in the Rat House in Germany.
Man, but look, see, like I wasn't wrong. It did say the Helvetica, that's a Latin, but still says Helvetic Confederation on their Capitol building. So
that's the font that I'm going to put the word specimen in on the front of the white T-shirt is Helvetica.
Times New Roman. Like, that is
Helvetica Light.
Dude, honestly, man, that would be respectable for real, man. We might need to open up the Specimen brand. But beyond that, what does their train station look like? That looks like exorbitantly modern. Wow.
It has to be modern. Everything in Switzerland looks so nice because they have so much money flowing through their system. They just can't help but spend it.
Wow. Those are clean, actually.
This is what happens when you bank groups in the Middle East. You make a lot of cash.
There's this weird guy. He came up here. His name was Osama bin Laden or something, but he gave us loads of money and we put it in our banks. And, we've been making.
He said he was in the lobster trade and he was looking for a 12-month CD to get interest on his money because he needed it to go fund his lobster business. He needed more cages.
He said he's a fine purveyor of mushrooms from the well-ventilated caves of Afghanistan, and so we gave him the money, and he just off he went. I don't know what happened to him.
Also, there was this other really fishy guy that showed up named Osama bin Laden, who said he ran a soup place and he was the ladler. Like he would ladle the soup out to the customers. And he said he needed to buy some more utensils for his soup business, and he needed just $250 million, a small loan of $1 billion. That's all to keep his business running.
And then there was this other guy who apparently we already have an account open for this guy called Silky Johnson, but this other guy came in. Apparently, it's in the same business called al-Baghdadi, and apparently they call him Daddy wherever he's from, but he came in, and he was saying that he ran this furniture company called ISIS, and he required some money to be able to help them to keep running their furniture business. So, of course, we gave him some money as a loan, and he actually put a good amount of money in, billions of dollars, weirdly enough, billions of dollars. Crazily enough, it turned out later that he ended up dying in the furniture business. He apparently he had an accident with a drone or something like that he bought from someone, but very unfortunate thing. We don't ask a lot of questions here in Switzerland. We really just only care about the money being put into the bank so we can loan out to others. But a very interesting kind of a development here. But nevertheless, also he did say that he did have a job on the side, considering that his name is that of a street name. He said that he was a fine purveyor of goods and services. And then when we asked, is that luxury furniture? He said it was bitches. but anyways, it's like, not with that. Just kidding around. Huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Howie. But one day we hope to come to Switzerland. That would be a pretty neat place to see, actually. I've always wanted to go to Switzerland and see the Alpenlands for myself, like Grindelwald, like right here. Look at this. The little town of Grindelwald in the middle of the Alps. Really cool place.
I love that. If money wasn't a problem, and also my, obviously I don't have Swiss citizenship. I would love to go here just to live here for a little bit, because that looks so nice right there. That is so beautiful, but it's also so expensive as well. You got to pay to play here.
You got to be a player to live here. That's for real. But look at this.
That is so nice.
It's just so nice, man. And what's nice to know is that under every single house, there's a nuclear-proof bunker. Pretty cool.
I like to have a bunker under every house. That's probably as valuable as some U.S. houses, that bunker alone.
Is this run by the Haitian Railways? No, this is run. I don't even know who the hell runs this one.
The Haitian Railway?
The Haitian Railway. You ever heard of them?
Oh, no. I was like, what are the Haitians doing running a railway in Switzerland?
So the Haitian Railway is this little narrow gauge railway that runs through the Alps in Switzerland. Really, really cool. It's almost like it's like a mixed passenger tourist kind of a railroad. It's all passenger mostly. They do some freight, but really neat little railway. I thought that's what they had servicing their little city here, but it appears not. Although that might be part of the Haitian Railway. I don't know. But anyways, beyond that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we know. But a huge thanks to you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a very generous $20 donation. And thank you, Adam, as well, for that $20 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And Adam says, I formally request that you use the F word for the first time on your channel. Any context you want to use it in, it's just fine with me. And I will say it. I will say it. I will be the one to say it. Finland. If you want to win, you hire a Finn. But Enforcer, tell us more.
I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll do it. I'll do it this one time just for you, buddy. I'll do it this one time. Look, Jack, you gotta go into America to be described with one word. I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have goofy antics like that, Adam McLean. But I do thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you who supported this channel and helped it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to have goofy little shticks like that right there. We wouldn't be able to have goofy little shticks. Beyond that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment. I see a lot of people joking, this is a family show. Of course. We're only covering war. We don't want to, throw the F-bomb out. That'd be absurd. I mean, really, that'd be worse than, watching some Russian get hit by a drone, or, some guy getting run over by an APC or something. I mean, that's crazy right there. To think we'd say the F word on air. I mean, that's just freaking crazy. I mean, that's so damn crazy. But I'm just kidding, by the way. We'll get on to that last question. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our last super chat of the segment goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you, Rye Guy, for that support. He said, why do you think the current U.S. officials are so hell-bent on getting reparations for the money that the prior U.S. administration and Congress allocated to Ukraine in the mineral deal? And also, with no additional weapons and no security, should Zelenskyy sign it, an LSA in Slav Ukraine?
The short answer, because we went over this earlier, is no. I don't think Zelenskyy should sign that. From a Ukrainian perspective, this is wildly unfair. Even from an American perspective, this is wildly unfair. I don't know what it is with wanting the money back. I don't know. I really don't know, because I can't really think of a reason why. It's a drop in the bucket compared to the money we throw around. Like, just to put this out there, the U.S. government gave away $500 billion at the beginning of this guy's administration just a couple of months ago to an AI company. $500 billion to one AI company. And not only that, we started to reopen and construct brand new nuclear power plants to keep the AI systems running.
It's canceled.
Oh, it's canceled?
Yeah, as a result of the recent economic tumult, Microsoft, at least allegedly, I saw this on Twitter, so of course take it with a grain of salt, but I had heard a rumor or some tweets that Microsoft had canceled their nuclear projects for AI. Let's pull it up. Microsoft cancels nuclear power projects. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, I'm not seeing nothing here. Let's double check. It could be fake news. Let's see here. Fake news. Let's see. Power plant cancel. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm seeing people say on April the 8th, allegedly, according on Twitter, and so far I'm not finding any articles on Google about it, but I see it on Twitter. It says Microsoft cancels $1 billion project to build 3 new data centers in Ohio. So apparently some people are, this appears to be fake news, I'll be honest with you, because some people are saying it's power plants, some people are saying it's data centers. So I take it back. I retract. Apparently, that might be fake news. So go right ahead, Enforcer. Apparently, you're right.
But we put $500 billion of government money. And also, that's another thing, Matthew. Why in the world would they be canceling projects that are funded with government money? That's like given,
that's a good point.
That makes no sense. They're getting the money, we held under high water, but they gave $500 billion to an AI company to produce an AI system and to develop it further, okay? Now, let's put that out there, all right? Let's think about that, folks. We could put all that money given to Ukraine to the veterans. Well, the amount of money that we gave to that AI company is 10 times more than we gave to Ukraine over 3 years. Where is the outrage that that wasn't given to the veterans and also the homeless in our country? And also, I got to ask this, by the way, really quickly. Coming from the state of Alabama, I have a generally good idea of the pulse of a certain kind of a thing that I grew up in. We'll call it more conservative kinds of mindsets. When in the world did we really start getting big into welfare? Like, when in the world did that happen? Because I remember when I was growing up, I remember hearing people say, oh, all those damn people on welfare, we ought to cut the welfare and they all ought to get jobs. I remember that extended even at some points to the veterans. Like, people were like, oh, those people at the VA, they don't need the money. They need to get out and bust their ass like everyone else. And, like, I remember that was extreme down here when I was a kid. So then all of a sudden we started shifting to, we need to become a welfare state and everyone needs to get everything for free. Like, we need to cut everything we're doing in the world and just stop to give out all the money we can to the homeless people. Like, that never was the thing. That never was the thing when I was growing up. And some people, it's just, like, I don't get it. Because, like, and of course, not getting political here, just want to make that a little bit clear. Not getting political here, but at the same time, supporting Ukraine, I don't know why we want to get repaid on it. It's a drop in the bucket. And not only that, it doesn't really matter much. And on top of that, it was already approved to them by the Congress to support them. And we had no concept of it being a loan. So I don't really get it. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I'll be honest with you, the arguments that are being made to not support Ukraine because the money could be used in other ways, I've never known like that group to be a big fan of the welfare whole thing, like never until now for some reason. And and I don't really understand it, to be entirely honest, because I don't know how it lines up with everything else. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. But I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Woo-wee! It's time for us to get to the rest of the news, and I just noticed that it's late on in the night. We've been long-winded tonight. Long-winded, well, at least I have been. But moving on from that and into the area around China, we've been able to hear that the Chinese Coast Guard today violated the waters of Kinmen County. We were able to see here on this clip the Taiwanese Coast Guard intercepting the Chinese Coast Guard and stopping them from getting closer to Kinmen
Whatever he's saying, I believe in it. Is that a big T on the side of this boat right here?
I think that's for Taiwan.
You see, this is the best boat. The best boat. Turn on that siren. Turn it off. My ears are shaking.
They sat there and they turned on the siren. I said, the siren is too loud. Turn off the sirens. But moving on.
Man, even the boats have big T's on them now. Come on.
They did it, and they said, we really love you. We really love you, sir. We love you so much. And I said, thank you. That's great. We're now rescinding all tariffs on Taiwan, and not only that, we are giving them $5 grillion. But anyways, moving on from that, a little incident happened near Kinmen County today. Moving on into Ukraine itself, we did get a good amount of news from the front lines. Starting in our location unknowns, we were able to see that a Gaz-69... nice, was being used inside of Russia's war in Ukraine. Look at that piece of junk. These things were produced from 1953 to 1973. The first one of these rolled off the assembly line while Joseph Stalin was still running the Soviet Union. And we're now seeing that they're being used in Ukraine because they're running out of vehicles. It's a tough world for the Russians, but it's even tougher for the Ukrainians because they have a pitiful, terribly produced American M109 that got hit by an FPV, and believe it or not, it was only a glancing blow. The Russians build them better. Their SPGs go up like Roman candles. I mean, the Ukrainians should not settle for less. They should settle for a tank that is really impressive to watch get hit.
Акуратно. Я залажу.
Дивись, цей метал, він ріжеться, поняв?
Ага, понял. Отака от діч. А куди прилетів?
Ось справа, кумулятивка. Опа.
Опа, єсть.
І он до туди, якраз бачок туди вбіг, поняв? За стульчиком візьме.
And just oil everywhere. Look at that.
Ага, отака от.
Ну і проводка погоріла, все.
Well, man, they got to keep it greased up, you know.
Ага, ну на башні.
Yeah, gotta keep it nice and lubricated.
Man, I gotta tell you.
Все. Тут, значить, ціле поки, ну так візуально сказати не знаю.
Ну все, що на
Головне,
селі,
що ми відбили гармату.
то і добре.
Slow! But that's the end of that clip showing a damaged M109. Meanwhile, we also got to see Ukrainians defending themselves against an FPV attack. Sounds like we got music there. We'll have to mute that. But we can see them running down the dirt road with the large shopping bags. And you see the FPV right over there to the right. But that ain't going to deter the Ukrainians, because they're simply going to whip out this little move right here. They call it the pop and shot. Oh, he tripped and fell there really quick. He's getting back up. He's getting back up. He's making a boot and scoot for it. And he's turning her back around. Sadly, we can't see with the camera right now, but he is firing at the drone. He's now continuing to run. We can see the drone explode. Not really sure if he shot it down or if it just missed. But you see them still continuing on. You see the shopping bags were dropped, but that's the end of the clip. And they did survive the drone attack, which is fairly fortunate for them. Moving on from that, we got to see more donkeys in the Russian army.
Дядь Дим, смотри, машин нету, а шишаков пришлось использовать.
Man, I love these donkeys.
А что
Donkeys are very cute.
до такого дошли?
They seem like a very humble animal.
Man, I mean, if the Russians were alive today, they'd be riding in on a donkey.
The Russians said, let's take this nice, humble animal and put him right in the middle of the bomb field.
Let's take these sweet, cute, precious animals and bring them to hell and let them live in suffering with us every day.
О, на пастбище.
At least the Russians can relate now. They have another ass to join the ranks.
The number of asses in the Russian army never decreases, only grows. But moving on from that, we got to see the losses from the casualty report today. And, look at that, too!
Two more Bobcat skid steers. I love to see that. That is so nice. But tell us more.
I gotta tell you, it's a very nice number. 2 Bobcats, very much like 2 Corinthians, but nevertheless, Miss Disha, keeper of the records, great keeper of the records. We always go, wow, that's a great keeper of the records. People have been saying for years now, that's a great keeper of the records right there. Miss Disha, gotta love her. Miss Disha stated that troop losses dropped to a 7-day average of 1323. So expect a 1 million total in 60 days, a small loan of 1 million Russians, 165 supply trucks is the 11th highest loss, tied with March 21st of 2025. Not that bad. 11th, nobody remembers 2nd. Many people remember 11th. Some people are saying that special equipment is again a little bit higher. It's looking a little bit higher than the tanks, the lowest level in the past month. A very good, very interesting number. And artillery over the past 30 days, artillery's over 30 for the past 9 days. The recent average is about 55 days. I gotta say, not a great thing, but let's get into those numbers. 1,210 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 15 APCs, 165 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 61 artillery pieces, 122 drones, 1 Bobcat, one MLRS, correction there, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. The day was good, and it was good to me. It was great. Moving on from that and into the actual frontline news, we did get to see a PVV 302 up there on the northern front lines, a Swedish APC. Pretty cool. Moving on from that and further down the lines to Seversk, we also got to see a motorbike convoy getting taken out by Ukrainian drones as they play music over it.
Could you play me some more of that beautiful music while we watch the Avengers in Phoenix?
Why'd you stop playing that beautiful music? Oh, and it looks like they just got motorbiked. Oh.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Did you see those pistons just all over the ground?
Man, he pissed what?
Yeah, pissed off.
Whoa, look at that exposed piston. I mean, that must have been scary. That Russian must have pissed a ton.
I mean, if he was a real soldier, he would have known that when you go into battle, you just don't just go into battle. You gotta, watch your pants because you pissed yourself.
That was actually a really good one. Like, that sounded exactly like a... Oh, man.
You're talking a lot about fighting, but, you really just got to learn how to throw hands. I mean, you're not always going to have a tool with you. That mouse tool is not going to save you every time.
Back in my day, that started off bad. Back in my day, we used to go out there and we'd see the new recruits come in, and we go out there and we get these socks and we fill them with butter, and we go up into their barracks and we beat the hell out of them. We always wondered why they never stayed longer than their 2-year contract, but I guess they were just too weak.
That really hits deep when you think about it. I mean, he's no Justy Puller, but he could be the next. He could be the next Godzilla.
Meanwhile, that dude on another podcast, I don't know why my family doesn't talk to me. And it's like his voice is totally different and everything. It's like, no, it's like, that's not even your voice. You're putting on an act for every video. It's like, I thought that was his actual voice.
Yeah, he's just putting on an act.
Whoa, if he was so macho, why does he have to put on an act for every video? Why does he just talk like he normally does? What the hell's going on here?
This guy's no Buster Keaton, but he's pulling some stunts.
Well, he might not be Charlie Chaplin, but he's got me twiggling my mustache to figure out why the hell he's doing that voice. But moving on from that and on into the next clip down in Chasiv Yar, we also got to see the Russians getting hit down here by the Militias Regnum. So check it out. Oh, in that top floor right there. In New York, they call that prime real estate. Over here in Ukraine, they call that suckers real estate. And it looks like the whole building came in. They didn't just raise the roof, they lowered the floor.
You're really never a sucker for buying real estate. Real estate rarely backfires on you.
Absolutely not, unless if you're the Evergrande company in China.
Well, see, they're not real estate. That's fake estate. Like all that tofu
Fantasy
drag
estate.
construction, it catches up to you. Yeah, I tell you, it catches up to you. All that powder, like concrete, like it just crumbles eventually.
Also, someone just asked, Helene Natura said, what is the real voice of the Enforcer? It's actually really close to this, actually. Like, I'm a lot more monotone when I speak normally, but this generally is close to my speaking tone for the large part, just a little bit off. But the thing is that when I talk, I don't lower my voice to sound more macho. I actually raise my voice a slight bit in tone and pitch, so that way it's easier to fluctuate my voice and make myself sound more interesting. At least that's the hope. But we did get to see that the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back a little bit from Chasiv Yar, and it does appear that they are attempting to hold control of the city still. Moving on out of Chasiv Yar and down towards Touretsk, we were able to see the Ukrainians conducting a little clearing mission today, called a clearinghouse, because they're clearing that thing out.
Whoa, I mean, they're not Thor, but that skeleton hand's grabbing that lightning bolt. Look at that grip.
I guess you could call it high voltage, but someone needs to call OSHA.
I didn't think you could catch electricity like that unless you mean maybe your hands is made of conductive materials, but it's no lightning rod.
I mean, I called their hands soft, but I don't know what that is.
I mean, those truckers, I mean, they have rough skin, but this guy's bones. I don't know why, but that one killed me for some reason. I don't know why. I felt that one like in my gut when I did that one. That's the hardest I've ever cracked up on streaming. It was at my own joke. I think I might be a nuts.
You might be a narcissist. Like
Yeah, I might be. I just found a new problem. He's no narcissist, but he's not a dictator.
Dude, I need you to put out a community post where you like tell our entire audience to just like screw themselves and then say it's all about me. I need you to do that. I have a deep-seated need to see that happen. I'm just kidding, by the way, y'all. Like, we love having y'all here. That's something that another guy who runs a YouTube channel called the Hot Dog Man did one time. He dissed on his entire audience in a community post and then said that they don't need to be there for the news, which it was his job, was covering news. They need to be there for him, which he put it in the last part of his message. He said, I need them to be here for me. And I was like, dude, that's so narcissistic. It's like people are here to listen to the news. But we still yap a lot in the news. So I feel like y'all are kind of here for us, like maybe a quarter of the percentage, but the larger percentage is that y'all are here for the news. So we always make sure to keep that in mind.
You better be here for me.
I want them to be here for me. And then he found out.
Could you imagine saying that out loud though? Like obviously anybody that's on like YouTube or on a stream, they're obviously hoping the audience wants to be there to hear them talk. Like that's the hope. Not everybody wants to, but they're hoping that people will like to be there to hear them talk. But to say that out loud and like insist that people must. Oh, I thought that was a dude that fell out the back there from me. I was about to say that dude just fell out like he was dead.
Whoa, I mean, might not be Irish, but he fell out like a sack of potatoes.
I mean, I'm no CIA field officer, but that looked like a dead drop.
That was so goofy. Like, that was actually hilarious. Dude, honestly, man, coming up with the goofiest stuff, that's pretty on point for what that content is.
I mean, I'm no marketing expert, but dumb is the new smart. That received no laughs because that's actually facts.
Yeah, that's just honestly, man, that was just straight up facts. I was like, well, I can't. Whoa, I mean, like, I can't disagree with that, but if you want me to agree, then I insist. You see them moving through the streets. Oh, we can see him actually getting in a gunfight there at close range.
Some bot's gonna come in a minute and be like, "He's lying. He's lying. He's a CIA. He's CIA. He knows about a dead drop. Oh, I know it."
Yeah, we're working from a black site here in Alabama, by the way, just to let y'all know.
Yeah, the whole state of Alabama is like that, man. It's all secret.
Especially when you get to someone's private property, man. You just hear, "What is this?" You're never gonna find out. It's like wow. It's like
you say, this ain't McLean, Virginia, but they're out here doing secret stuff in the woods that you can't tell nobody about. That trailer over there with that smoke coming out the stack, you can't tell nobody about that. You heard me?
You see that damn giant metal pot with all them twirly tubes around it? You shut your damn mouth because you didn't see it. Man,
Jesse and Walt told me I can't tell nobody about what they're cooking, but I'm letting them cook.
Man, call me Gordon Ramsay because I be cooking, but it ain't food.
Let him cook.
Man, call me Marco Pierre White because I got something that looks like North stock pot, but it sure as hell ain't brown. It's blue. It's like, and it comes in these little things called rocks. But anyways, we see him hitting them. Whew, man.
What is this? Like, what is this place?
It's a mining facility in Touretsk. It's an abandoned one, of course. I asked you in the clip right there.
Destiny Edgington said, Matt lives in the sticks. No, formerly, no longer. I used to live in the sticks, but that was many, many years ago. I now live in the city.
Man, they said we're going to go big or bust, and funnily enough, a lot of DEA busts were happening out in those trailers out there in the middle of them woods. Like, honestly, a lot of them. You wouldn't believe how many people get bored and just accidentally cook up meth. It's just kind of crazy how that happens here in Alabama daily. But anyways, when you see here, all right, we got some sort of a chant going on in the background. This guy's got a nose that might be bloodied a little, but we see them hitting the Russians down there near New York. This ain't New York, America. Now, New York, America might be as lawless, but this ain't New York in New York, USA. This is New York and Ukraine.
Also, funnily enough, speaking of raids, I was walking out the back door and yesterday, and I walked outside, and all these black SUVs pulled up, and they were going fast and pulled in, and everybody jumped out. And I was like, holy moly, guys, what's going on? It turned out it was a raid down the street. I said, whoa. I mean, this isn't a bad neighborhood, but, I don't even know where to go with that one. But honestly, though, there actually was a raid. I walked outside, and there was a raid happening, and all these black trucks and stuff started pulling up, and these cops, and I was like, oh, damn, they're finally here to pick me up. I was like, look at that. They're finally here for me.
I got a good one, man. I mean, this isn't a bad neighborhood, but the property values surely aren't going up.
Whenever that happens, like whenever like all these like police and stuff start pulling up, no matter like obviously they were going for somebody else apparently nearby. They were wanting to go get somebody for something. It was apparently serious because they rolled up pretty deep. But I was like, let's see here. Well, did I file everything on time? Did I do this? Did I do that? I was like, surely they're not here for me. But no, they weren't here for me. They were just moving right along.
Now we're not.
They just said, "Oh no, let's go get these other people instead."
We're not that important yet. At least. Oh, look, this guy's got some card stock there.
One day the black truck's going to roll up and they're going to say, "So what did you guys say about that trade war? We heard you saying some things about that trade war." I'll be like, "Oh God."
Which one of y'all does that funny little voice?
Which one of y'all does that impersonation, huh? Who's the funny guy?
Dude, you're gonna see some guy, man. He's going to roll up, man. He's going to roll down the window. He's going to have some crazy looking eyes. He's going to say, "I'm Cash. Which one of you bastards?" It's going to be like, oh, God, it's over. It's like, oh, no. Dude, it's going to be over. We're going to be so cooked. But anyways, we also got to see the 107th Territorial Defense Forces knocking out a Russian assault shed today near Pokrovsk. We see the drone coming on in. They're about to cook them up nice and good. Next thing you know...
Someone said in the chat, as a retired U.S. federal officer, it happens a lot, man. Everybody has a bathtub for illicit substance. Honestly, I didn't even know that was done in a bathtub. That's even nastier. I only knew very little about that process, but that's even more disgusting. I didn't even know that, by the way.
It was made in the finest of porcelain. Oh, man. Anyways, we got to see the Russians getting cooked around here as well. Take a gander at this. Now, that's a burning road right there. That's for sure. A burning road, I tell you. A burning road. We're going to just shrink that down a little, and we're just going to watch this from afar here, just in case, you need to click off. There's a Hell Rider down there in the bottom left, which kind of threw me off there because I forgot what this clip was really about. But we can see the Russian wandering along. And we can see him rolling around on the ground. He's doing some evasive maneuvers there, and all of a sudden the clip kind of like fades away. But then it was an unfortunate day for him. It looks like he's going to need some massages for his back. Moving on from that and down to Odessa, we got to see some CB-90s in service. These are the Swedish coastal patrol boats provided to Ukraine.
Oh no, that's nice. There's music.
Oh. why don't you stop playing that beautiful music? You know, we could be like another guy and be like, I can't play it. It's like, you know, it's like,
I don't have the rights, okay? I don't have the rights.
honestly, man, every time he does that, I respect that, honestly, because I'm like, I pretty much do the same thing in another way. But moving on from that, we're now going on up to Kyiv. It is time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1143 of the war, if I'm remembering the numbers correctly. And he was in Dnipro region in Kyiv. Not a long one, but it's long enough for me to go to the restroom. So without further ado, here's the speech. Peach!
Українці, українки, сьогодні поїздка на Дніпровщину в Кривий Ріг. Вшанував загиблих від російського удару від балістики. Рівно тиждень тому 19 людей вбила російська ракета, 9 дітей. Зараз я в укритті, саме в цій школі, в якій 3 дитини навчались, на жаль, вони загинули. У той же день була ще й атака шахедів, ще життя вони тоді забрали. Вічна пам'ять. Сьогодні саме звідси, з Кривого Рогу, звернувся до учасників Рамштайну, засідання в Брюсселі. Головне для нас – це протиповітряна оборона. Додаткові системи ППО, ракети до них, щоб захищати життя людей, захищати наші міста. Дуже розраховуємо на рішення партнерів. Потрібні системи, вони є в світі, потрібне політичне рішення, щоб ППО працювало. Працювало тут, в Україні. Дніпро, Кривий, Нікополь, Харків, Суми, Чернігів, Миколаїв, Одеса, багато інших наших міст і наших громад. Ми говорили про це з президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки, з президентом Трампом. Україна не просто просить, ми готові купити відповідні додаткові системи. І саме сильна зброя – єдине, чому можна довіряти – захист життя, маючи такого сусіда, як Росія. Щоб українські діти могли навчатись в безпеці просто в школі, не онлайн, а офлайн, нормально, як в Америці, як всюди в Європі. І не в таких підземних класах, які можуть дати більше безпеки, але які ніде не повинні бути нормою, а просто в школах. ППО – це перший пріоритет. Я дякую партнерам, які нам вже допомагають. Також буде суттєве нове фінансування систем радіоелектронної боротьби. Це плюс 540 мільйонів гривень. Я доручив уряду ухвалити рішення, посилити захист. Є вже і рішення щодо додаткового фінансування для наших прифронтових громад, прикордонних з Росією громад, тих, які постійно знаходяться під ударами, під обстрілами. До 10 мільйонів гривень на кожну нашу таку громаду, в залежності від кількості людей в громаді. І це буде не одна така виплата. Ми плануємо зробити таку регулярну підтримку на першочергові потреби громад, щоб допомогти і з укриттями, і з транспортом, і з іншими рішеннями для захисту людей. Спілкувалися сьогодні з представниками громад Дніпровщини. Я хочу подякувати їм всім. Дякую всім, хто з людьми, хто допомагає, хто захищає. Відвідав наших воїнів, які відновлюються після поранень. Вдячний кожному лікарю, який рятує наших хлопців. Вдячний всім, хто пам'ятає. Кожен важливий, кожен впливає, кожен має докладати сил, щоб Україна зберігала сили. Дякую вам. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. And I gotta say, before we move on, funnily enough, y'all are not gonna believe this. That classroom right there that he's standing in actually looks better than most of the classrooms we ever were in growing up. I'm not even exaggerating on that.
Yeah, it's actually, honestly, it's actually the truth, really. Those desks are like way nicer than we ever had.
Oh man, dude, remember what we used to be in, man? It was like Dude, it was literally like prisons that we were in, like prison yards and stuff. It was crazy, honestly, what Alabama schools are like. But anyways, beyond that, that was the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that wraps up the speech on in the news segment on day 1143 of the war, and that moves us on right on into the second segment where we get to talk to all of y'all. What a fun segment it is, folks. We love talking to y'all. We really do. I don't know why that came out sounding so insincere, because I was trying to make it sound sincere, and honestly, that sounded like I forced it. But we really do enjoy getting to talk to all of y'all. It's a very fun time. And of course, we hope that y'all stick around, because we usually talk about literally anything and everything. But just to let y'all know, it's over. We're not going to be talking about the news anymore tonight. So if you want to hear the news, just rewind. Be kind, please rewind. You will hear all of the news, all 2 hours of it, but now we get to sit back and kind of relax with all of y'all. And also thank all the folks who have supported the channel tonight to help to make this thing a reality, make it possible, even as tax season is upon us all. And tax season is also known as Super Chat Apocalypse, because nobody super chats up to like the week before taxes and about the week after taxes hardly. Like the amount of super chats drops like to the floor. So we will be thanking everyone, all of the folks who are going out of their way in the middle of tax season to be supporting the channel. No one ever has to support the channel at any given time of the year, so it's honestly even more impressive when people are supporting during the middle of tax season, because honestly, I get the terror that is leading a lot of people not to support the channel, because we're also having to pay taxes as well, and it honestly is terrifying every time it comes around. But nevertheless, we will be getting to all of the super chats and live chats that we can tonight, and I have a feeling that it's going to be an absolute blast, Matthew, an absolute blast. So what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, we have one more poll to get to, and the question says, should the United States only contribute to other countries' defense when there is investment potential? 67% said no, the USA should simply do the right thing, while 23% said yes, we must get a real return, while 10% said unsure. And honestly, I would say this. The way it works in the real world is nobody does anything on a country-to-country level unless there is something to benefit that country in return. Also, that kind of works like that that way on a human level as well. So it's very rare that people do things just for doing the right thing. Now, obviously, it would be a perfect world if people did that, but that's not really the way it works. So, in my opinion on this one, I would say that we should have to get some type of return. That doesn't mean necessarily money in return. Of course, by helping Ukraine, we're ensuring that Europe is once again has a buffer zone between Russia and NATO. And of course, Ukraine serves that buffer zone. Also, it is once again letting Russia know they can't just invade foreign countries and get away with it, because that might embolden them to attack other countries that border them as well, which is not good for international stability. So I would say that we should get a return, but it doesn't have to be necessarily like a monetary return. Like, for example, they send over a briefcase full of money. That's not what we have to get. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's really a mix of the two. Like you were saying, the U.S. should do the right thing, but doing the right thing, if we want to call it that, there's an inherent return on investment on that if we do the supposed right thing. There's always been, y'all, I want to know, like, government spending things. Let me go show y'all. Government spending programs. Let's see, government spending projects. Let me go pull that up really quickly. Well, let's go see here. Let's go see. Oh, let's see here, folks. Trying to find their massive government spending projects. Largest government spending projects. Let's go find that really quickly, folks. I'm trying to see if we can find this here. Let's see here. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. What the hell's going on around here, huh? You know, not going to tell me. I'm just trying to find the projects here, and they're not wanting to tell me. They wanted to show me these graphs, what we're spending on. That's not what I want to know. That's not what I want to know. But oh, damn it. I don't think I'll be able to find this, folks, sadly. I was wanting to find, some of the big government spending projects. Believe it or not, folks, the most money that we ever put into a single thing was the interstate system. Like, as far as, like, a project went, I can't find that information here easily, but it is. We put about $1 trillion, 1.3 trillion, technically, in 1950s money into the interstate program to build the interstate. And you know what was crazy, folks? The government wasn't going to make a cent off of that, and they weren't going to get repaid for it directly. Not a dime, not a dollar. And then the Marshall Plan also rebuilt Europe economically for free. We didn't even ask anything from them. And then we still got money off of it. You know, we did a whole bunch of other things. We rebuilt Japan. You know, we had them under a military occupation for 10 years. Rebuilt their whole country and economy and stuff. And then we just kind of bounced, and we actually benefited from that greatly. You know, we threw a lot of money at South Korea, too. And we make a lot of money off of our trade relationship with them nowadays as well. I mean, really, when you think about it, throwing money at people for free, you know, it doesn't seem like that's a good idea up front, but we have a lot to get a return on investment there from it in the future. I know some people sit there and think, wow, that's crazy. Looking right beyond your nose and doing abstract things with an idea of a return on investment, abstract form in the future in an indirect way. That's honestly crazy. That sounds stupid. I mean, and it kind of does sound a little stupid, but you know what's crazy? Historically, it works. So is it really stupid if it historically works all the time? I mean, no, it's not, because it works. So the proof's in the pudding, and the proof is there. And someone's about to tell me that phrase means nothing. Well, that's the way it's always been said in the South. I've always heard the proof is in the pudding. Haven't you, Matthew?
I've heard that.
Yeah, that's a common saying down here in the South. Someone said that it's something like the proof is in the pudding when you bake it nice and right. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that phrase is. I've never heard about that. But that's how this world works right here, is how I just explained it right there. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. I mean, think about it, Matthew. Think about it. The government doesn't get a return on investments from those little snot-nosed kids, man, and all of those educational facilities around the United States. You know, elementary school, middle school, high school. I feel like, man, honestly, those little kids are underappreciated. They don't say thank you enough. I think we ought to be putting them out there, man, into the factories, into the mines. They are like, for every hour they spend in school, they need to spend an hour in the mines. We need to get a return on investment on them, man. Like the indirect.
Oh no.
Return. Mm-hmm.
Well, you do know the reason why, like, for one thing, the reason why the federal government's so incentivized to do education is because they see that as investing in the workforce. That's why they do that. They're getting something out of it by basically educating their next generation of workers.
Yeah, Matthew, but the thing is that we don't get a direct return on investment on that, Matthew. That's some sort of an abstract thing. I mean, maybe that pays off in like 20 years, but we got to put those little shits through 12 years of school. For what? I mean, we're not even getting anything. They go to school. We got to pay teachers. We got to pay for the building. They got to eat. I mean, that's so stupid. Every hour they're in a class, here's how I think it should be structured, Matthew. 7 o'clock in the morning, they're at school. By 12 o'clock, they have a 15-minute lunch, and then the rest of the day, they're not really in school. They're down in the coal mines, mining coal. I think that's how it ought to work, because we ought to not be sitting there and letting these little snot-nosed kids go to school for free and just get nothing out of it. And also, another thing I think, you know something else, folks? I think that all those people out there that continue to get tax refunds from the government, those goofy people, they just don't get it, do they? The government shouldn't be giving you a tax refund. No, you ought to be thanking the government for existing on their land. No. They ought to take all of your money, because you're an unappreciative little snot-nose if you think you can drive around on an interstate without having to pay a toll every time you do it, or sitting there and going to an airport and not paying the government a usage fee because you're sitting there in the airport that tens of billions of dollars of government money built for you, and city money and state money. And that's absolutely ridiculous. So you don't think you have to pay your fair share every time you do that. Hell, you better yet, all these people going out looking at trees. I mean, trees that are naturally growing. What are you, a freeloader? You ought to be giving the government money. I mean, that's a government tree right there on federal land that you're looking at in Yellowstone. Do you think you're just going to drive through for? Well, actually, technically, you have to pay admission to get in Yellowstone, but every tree you look at is going to be an extra 20 cents. Every tree you look at in Yellowstone, extra 20 cents. So when you sit there and you look at it.
And also, we pay good taxes to the state of Alabama, too. But at the same time, though, I have to go pay admission to get into the local Oak Mountain State Park and just to simply go look at pine trees, which makes no sense because I thought I was paying taxes to maintain that. But instead, I paid taxes, and then they also double charged me to go see it, which is just beautiful. Just beautiful, Jerry. It's just beautiful.
I mean, isn't that stupid, Matthew, when you think about it? All the money that the government's throwing out to people, all these freeloaders. Like, don't you think it's ridiculous, all these people collecting this stupid stupid thing called Social Security. They paid into it their entire lives, and they expect a payout when they turn 65? Hell, let them go poor. That's the government's money. You owe the government for getting old and also working. So just pay in the Social Security and shut the hell up, because you ought to be thankful. You ought to be saying thank you. What the hell's up with all these people thinking they need to get money from the government, free handouts? This is ridiculous, man. And then people sitting there getting on Medicaid. I mean, that's ridiculous. The government doesn't give a shit if you have a cough. I mean, you ought to be paying. You ought to be saying thank you for the cough. I mean, if it wasn't for you breathing in that free air that the government's allowing you to breathe every day without taxing it, then you ought to be saying thank you for getting that freaking cold and pneumonia or whatever you had to breathe in the air to get in the first place. Be grateful, damn it. All right? Shit.
I thought the politicians were supposed to say thank you to the constituents for electing them and putting them in that position where they could make $400,000 a year. I thought they were supposed to be telling us thank you for trusting in them to lead the country or something. I mean, isn't it supposed to be the other way around? I mean,
no. Man, we're pretty much lords these days of this country. We don't even get elected. They just keep voting us in to the point that we're pretty much like lords of our fiefdom. They ought to be saying thank you to us. I mean, like, shit, this is really how it works these days. I mean, you get elected in, you stay there for 60 years. You might as well be a damn, appointed lord or something from your kingdom. I mean, that's ridiculous, honestly. Ridiculous to say that we have to say thank you to the constituents. That's ridiculous. They ought to be saying thank you to us for having a right to breathe. And you know what? I'm going to make it even harder on them. Come around May, guess what, folks? Your state IDs, not good enough anymore. Proving that you're the citizen of a state, to hell with you. We don't care if you're a citizen of a state. Now you got to be Big Daddy government's property. You got to be Uncle Sam's property. So you got to put a little yellow star, which has absolutely no parallels whatsoever to putting yellow stars on clothes in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, onto your state IDs now, and pretty much otherwise you have to show you a passport to be able to travel around the country by plane. All right, so we're going to make it a little bit harder on y'all, but say thank you, because you're flying on a plane, and we can just strip you of that privilege anyways, and then everyone has to take the train. So say thank you, and Big Daddy government will be back around the corner with something even better. You know what?
I like it when people phrase, like, for example, when people start getting a little bit too overzealous with the government. Like even some citizens are like this, so they get way too overzealous that the government should control everything. It's like, you don't want the government to take away your driving privileges or your flying privileges. It's like, well, since when did some things become like privileges? Like, as in, like, they're just letting us do it out of the kindness of their hearts. It's like, yeah, you had to get a driver's license. Like, obviously you have to get a license to drive your car, but generally speaking, they can't just restrict you from driving unless you commit a crime and lose your license. It's like, they can't just snatch your quote unquote privilege away at will. And some people are more than happy to start believing in that and fully following into that idea of, oh, that's your privileges. That's not your rights. That's just your privileges. It's like, that's a bad idea to start thinking like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, man. I saw you, by the way, that Matthew's talking about something specific today, and I am too a little bit, that we've been aggravated with, and by the way, oh, God, the amount of ignorant people on this one on Twitter was actually absurd. So there's this thing coming around in May that's called, I think, the Real ID, if I'm correct, Matthew, where you have to pretty much have a federal ID to be able to travel by plane now across America, or you have to show your passport to get on the plane. So nowadays, although freedom of interstate commerce has been a big thing constitutionally throughout the entire nation's history, now you have to have your papers to board an airplane, or you have to have a little star proving that you showed your papers to the authorities to get on a plane and fly across the country. Now state IDs and being the citizen of your state doesn't mean shit when it comes to flying. Now you have to be pretty much a citizen of the federal governments to be able to fly on a plane. And I find that to be a massive affront to the authority of a state government.
Oh, and also, by the way, you can get this endorsement on your state license that is Real ID compliant. Apparently, because I'm learning all about this today, because apparently May the 7th is the deadline for it. The bill, I think, passed in 2005 to implement Real ID, but it's been postponed for decades because it's been so controversial. But they're deciding to go forward with it now on May the 7th. And you either have to get the star on your license, which indicates your ID is accepted by the federal government, because apparently the federal government doesn't accept a state ID as being valid unless they put their gold star on it, which is kind of interesting. I thought a state ID was pretty valid, but apparently not to the feds. Or you can use a passport to fly around, like the enforcer's saying. So honestly, I know some people are like, well, some states issue fake identification for people that aren't citizens. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, I was not aware of that until today. But at the same time, though, it's like, should we all be punished for that by having to be forced to get basically federal papers or federal identification for a central database? It's like, is that really the answer to punish every citizen in the country over that? I'm not really sure. Like, it just seems a little bit strange, but I guess it is the thing. Got to comply, or otherwise you don't get to fly. Apparently, you'll lose your flying privileges.
I'll be honest with you, that seems like a federal overreach of power to me. Like, I'm just going to be honest with all of y'all. It's been going, like, this has been in the works since 2005. So 20 years later, it's finally happening. This is a massive federal overreach, in my opinion, that's violating the rights and the authority or sovereignty of the states of the United States of America, because it's pretty much saying your state IDs and the authority of a state to pretty much say that this person has, exists or has driving privileges or something like that, if you want to call them privileges, it now means nothing. That means nothing at all. Unless you're driving your car across state lines, doesn't mean shit. If you want to fly in a plane, which is really the only way you can get around in this country these days, the federal government now has to say that you are a citizen and that you're good to go for you to be able to fly in a plane. That seems to me to be absolutely outrageous. And some people are going to say, well, I mean, some states are handing out their licenses to illegals. Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, okay? One, not every state does things the same way. Like, even if you don't like that, the state of Alabama does things that are kind of a little bit backwards, like in a good amount of ways. Some other states do that, which I would say it seems a little bit backwards that, someone who isn't even a U.S. citizen can get a driver's license, but, that's how they work it in their state, and Alabama has a whole bunch of jank ways that we do things, and, it ends up just being what it is. But you don't sit there because of that and go, there's some things that we don't really like going on a state-to-state basis, so let's just federalize it. You can't do that with everything, because what are they going to do next? Are they going to federalize presidential and congressional elections? Like, are they going to have that run by the federal government? Because I don't know if y'all know this, but when presidential and congressional elections come around, it's not the federal government that's running those elections. It's actually the state governments in every state that's running their part of that election. So when you go in, each state has their own different election laws, such things as that. A lot of states moved on. A lot of states are currently having a bit of a battle right now in between paper ballot counting and computerized ballot counting, and the laws on that are different from state to state. There are a lot of different things actually from state to state. Some laws can vary significantly. Like in Alabama, you have a stand your ground law. In California, I don't think you have a stand your ground law when it comes to self-defense. That's just different. That's what the constituents of California wanted. They voted their state assembly to vote that way. Well, they voted in their state assembly to vote that way. They voted that way, and that's what they wanted. If they want to change it, they can vote in people to change it, but that's how California works. Alabama's different. So what is the federal government going to start doing? Are they going to start saying, we really don't like that Alabama has a stand your ground law, or we don't like that California has no stand your ground laws, so we're just going to federalize the issue and make it across the board. There is a stand your ground law or there isn't. Pretty much it's just stripping the states of their rights and their responsibilities to the citizens of their states and making everything a federal issue. It's federalized, like honestly at this point, like with the whole real ID thing, I'll be honest with y'all, I'm starting to see a lot of the anti-federalists, fears and worries from the very early times of this country when the Constitutional Convention was actually alive and existing in 1787. A lot of the things that they were scared of nowadays look like they're slowly happening over time, with how much the federal government is starting to take authority and power from the states and consolidating it in the federal government. I mean, states are almost going to become ceremonial here in the future. I mean, hell, they honestly already are because of how the tax system works. Look at, when y'all file y'all's tax returns right now, look how much the federal government takes and look how much the state takes. Back in the day when most people were alive at the earlier part of the last century, it actually was the state government taking the most of your tax money, and the federal government wasn't really taking much. And then over time, the federal government started to stick the straw in a little bit further into the tax money, where they were starting to directly receive it. And then a lot of states started to get pressured that their citizenry were suffering under the incredibly high taxes. And so the states had to start relenting, and they started releasing a lot of their taxes, making the amounts smaller and smaller, while the federal government made theirs larger and larger. So as far as the finances in the country go, How it's running right now is that the federal government has all of the money, and hardly any states make enough tax money to be self-sufficient and really do what they want. So they've been having to bend their knee for about 60 years or so to pop a federal government and do exactly what the federal government wants them to do. Otherwise, pop a federal government isn't going to give them the money they need just to make sure their state survives. That's how it's been working for 50 or 60 years, and it's a complete affront to the rights of states.
Well, the whole Real ID thing came from generally around the same era that the Patriot Act was passed back in 2001. Well, also, by the way, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, by the way, you can feel however you want about it. The Patriot Act was one of the worst losses of civil rights in the United States in the entire history of the country. And it was all in one single act that so many rights were basically signed away because, of course, the terrible events of 9/11 happened. And everybody was in an uproar trying to go get even with the people that caused it in the Middle East. They went and got even with them. And at the same time, they passed the Patriot Act in response to it, which lost a ton of civil rights and brought in basically an entirely brand new era of the United States when it comes to how people function, how people fly, how people do everything. Generally, the Real ID thing was back in 2005 when that was passed. So generally around the same time period, sort of within a few years, that kind of mindset was still going really strong. So that is a holdover from then. That's the crazy part about it. I'll be honest with you, there hasn't really been an act since the Patriot Act that has been more destructive than that one, in my opinion. That one was a pretty big one.
Also, really quickly, someone saying our forefathers wrote into doctrine we can attack the government. We can't anymore. That's a felon. No, you never could. Like, it's actually just spelled out in the Constitution, clear as crystal, that the Congress has a responsibility to crush insurrections. The founding fathers never codified anywhere that you have a right to attack the government and kill government officials and attempt to conduct an overthrow of the government. That never existed. Like, you're probably about to cite the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was a declaration of independence from Britain, but that wasn't like a clear check to U.S. citizens of the future to overthrow the government. No one's ever had a right to do that. So just putting that out there, like, that doesn't exist. Like, the whole thing about America that was cool is that you didn't have to attack the government and you didn't have to go into a war over every single issue, because instead of fighting over it and getting into a war or a civil war over everything, you could just simply vote out the officials that you didn't like and vote in new ones that actually supported what you wanted, and you worked through the democratic process instead of throwing endless civil wars and revolutions against the government. So, yeah, that's now they're saying it was indirect. Nope, it wasn't indirect or direct. You can read the Constitution. It clearly states that is not something to be done. And that's not even the amendments. That's literally written in Section 1 of the Constitution about the authorities and power of the Congress. So you can go and look at it. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to Ari Sawini, excuse me, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Ari, for that $50 support. That's very generous of you. We do appreciate that. They said LSA and great swear word, Kiwi wife, and Finn. And keep up the good work. And how to rephrase to be able to super chat.
Huh, that's weird. But I do thank you for the massive support, Ari Sweeney. Hey! At LSA, and we will keep up with the great work. And thank you so much for enjoying the little swear word right there. And we are trying as hard as we can to make sure that work keeps rolling. And also, I hate to hear that you had to reword it to super chat. YouTube's getting a little finicky with what they allow and what they don't allow. And say a whole super chat is a little bit weird with that, but I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, make this thing possible. I see some confusion here in the chat right now about the Constitution, so let me go pull up the U.S. Constitution really quickly. Because I just want to show y'all something a little bit important about the whole thing, because the Declaration of Independence has no binding authority over the United States of America. The Declaration of Independence is just this cool little thing that we wrote to Britain, has nothing to do with America these days. And also, someone said, I disagree, it's an old doctrine within democracy to overthrow a corrupt government. Where is that? Where does that exist? Where does that, like, that does not exist anywhere. What doctrine says, why, yes, in a democracy where you're supposed to have the rule of the vote, you can just go overthrow the will of the people and overthrow the government in an armed rebellion. That seems to be a little bit undemocratic. And now they're saying acknowledge me, Matt. Well, we're acknowledging you by speaking your stuff on air, and it doesn't even sound knowledgeable, really.
Well, I know where they're getting that misconception from. They've read the part in the Constitution that says that if the government becomes corrupt, then you can form a new one. That is not to be interpreted to mean, for example, the citizens just decide to overthrow the government, because they wouldn't write that in there for number one, because they don't want the government to be overthrown, or otherwise, what's the point of creating it? And number two, there's nothing in there, in my opinion, in my interpretation, that indicates that they actually meant to go overthrow the new United States government. They meant, for example, they were leaving Britain and they were coming here to form a new government. That's what they meant.
So here it is in the Declaration of Independence. And this is talking about Britain and breaking away from Britain. That is the specific context of this. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. So that was speaking directly to Britain. The Declaration of Independence was a Declaration of Independence directed to King George III, the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, when the United States was declaring open rebellion against the Crown. That's what that was. That was not supposed to be. And for everyone in the future, when we create our new nation, you have a right to just pick up guns and start shooting government officials day in and day out. That's not what that meant. That not even close. But this right here, Article 1, Section 8 of the authorities of the Congress, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. And this and the articles of the Constitution have not been changed from their original text in any way at all. It is the same text that was written by the Founding Fathers at the Constitutional Convention of 1787 that still exists in this section of Article 1 to this day, clearly stating that there is no right of the citizenry under any single scenario to overthrow the government, because attempting to overthrow the government is an insurrection or a rebellion by a synonymous term. And here in the Constitution, it lays out that the Congress has the authority and the clearly established right to suppress insurrections, meaning you do not have a right to overthrow the government. There has never been one, never will be. If you believe that is the case, then I hate to inform you that there was a group of people that attempted to do that right during the middle of the earlier part of of America's history in 1790. Let's see, from 1791 to 1794, called the Whiskey Rebellion, and the then retired former president George Washington came out of retirement, formed up a U.S. army at that point, marched in on up to these people who were conducting open rebellion against the state of Pennsylvania and the federal government, and went and shot them and made them run for the hills. So, no, you've never had a right to overthrow the government, because one of the very founding father, if you want to call him that, George Washington, went up and literally crushed a insurrection or a rebellion that was attempting to overthrow the government of Pennsylvania and the federal government, really for the whiskey tax, at the time. So, no, you've never had a right to do that. That just never has existed, like, ever, and there's really no argument for it. The people who make those arguments, like, they're not really well informed on how the U.S. government works and the history behind the United States. In America, if you don't like something, you have the right to vote. But if the majority goes against your vote, or for some reason whatever you're wanting just doesn't happen, that does not mean you have a right to go and pick up guns and start overthrowing the government. That's never been inherently stated anywhere by anyone. And if that was the case, then George Washington wouldn't have sat there and raised an army to go crush the Whiskey Rebellion. He would have stepped aside and said, oh, you know what? They actually have a right to overthrow our newly formed government that is so democratic and representative of the people. They ought to be able to just overthrow the will of the people and destroy the entire government that we just created. He would have said that instead of going, let's raise an army and go crush these people. So I hope that addresses that well. But it's something.
Also, by the way, I'm having an interesting debate with someone who apparently went to law school, and they were speaking about the Patriot Act. Interesting perspective. Also, by the way, it's not my intention to bash the person. Like, y'all feel free to have whatever perspective you'll want about, like, the Patriot Act. It kind of gets slightly political, so I'm not going to, like, go really hard on what I think about it. But I will say that, in my opinion, the positives of the Patriot Act are far outweighed by the negatives, because basically the Patriot Act allowed the federal government to subvert due process. They could spy on U.S. citizens without obtaining a warrant if it was in the interest of national security. That allowed them to bypass constitutional protections, your rights. It allowed them to bypass everything as long as they said it's in the interest of national security. I don't personally see how that can be argued to be a good thing because that erodes everybody's rights. Of course, they'll catch one or two bad people by doing that, but in the process, they have damaged your rights as an American citizen dramatically by doing that. And in my opinion, that just doesn't outweigh the negatives of losing those rights, because they can now expand that onto other aspects of the law and your other rights as well and start eroding those next, which is not good. So, in my opinion, if it weren't for the drastic circumstances of 2001, that Patriot Act would have never passed the legislature. It would have never passed. And the only reason it did is because people were so shaken up by what had happened, which, of course, those terrible events that took place. But in my opinion, that was no excuse to start signing away rights of Americans. That was no excuse for that.
Also, another thing, I saw someone say, I thought there was a right to overthrow the government in the Second Amendment. No. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. So to explain this really quickly, there was a fear at the time that the federal government was going to start absolving state militias. State militias were irregular bodies of armed citizenry, the citizens taking it upon themselves to provide themselves with the arms and accoutrements necessary for the conducting of limited warfare for the protection of their state. At the time, there was not the concept of the United States of America like we have today. There were the concepts of states far more important than the centralized idea of the United States. So the multiple states, like to explain this really quickly, the Bill of Rights is a thing. The Bill of Rights was created because of the Anti-Federalists, and the Anti-Federalists were staunch opponents of creating a stronger centralized federal government because of the idea that eventually this federal government would begin to threaten the rights of states and then completely start trampling on citizens' rights through not respecting the authorities of the state governments and the elected representatives of those states instead. So what the Bill of Rights was a compromise to where the Federalists said, well, if we get to pass the Constitution, we will write up a Bill of Rights that cannot be touched, that will protect the rights of the states from the federal government and also protect the rights of the citizens from being trampled on by the federal government. So the Second Amendment largely lays out that the federal government really cannot create any limitations to stop the citizenry from arming themselves and being of fit military service, or at least of fit equipment to be called up by their state government to serve in their militia. So pretty much the way you can look at, there's a load of different interpretations of how that actually is applied, but the general way that you can look at it is that the federal government was never supposed to make any overarching law that affected the entirety of the country that limited a state from being able to ensure that their citizenry were able to provide themselves with the arms and accoutrements that would be necessary in case if they were called up for service by their state into a militia. So that's largely what the Second Amendment lays out. It's not laying out that you have the right to create Bubba Joe's militia to overthrow the governor and also the president of the United States. That's not what the Second Amendment's saying. And you can also see that it's much more clearly laid out in the Constitution when we go back and revisit Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8 says that the Congress also has the ability to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. So it's not Bubba Joe's militia. They're calling forth the militias of the states. So like the state of Pennsylvania or the state of Georgia or the state of Maine. Those are the militias they're calling forward. Those militias are recognized and formed by the states, not by Bubba Joe out in the backwoods. So I hope that kind of addresses that fairly well. But once again, another thing that people don't understand is that a militia isn't the National Guard either. A militia is literally just the guys from the town, and you go, hey guys, there's these people over there, we got to go get them, and then they all get guns, and then they all just go wandering out. That's what it is. So as far as the private gun ownership kind of a thing we see in the United States, it exists that way because it is really largely, at least according to the original constitutional text, it is your responsibility to be fit for service, at least as far as your equipment is concerned. So if the state calls upon you to defend the state, you are ready to go. You have your own gun, your own ammunition, your own equipment. You are a self-sustained, pretty much prepaid soldier. The state government doesn't provide you any equipment. You have provided your own equipment. That's how that works. And that does not mean, like to once again add a little bit more to this, that doesn't mean that you can sit there and go, oh, well, you know, this citizen isn't a part of the 8th Regiment of the state of California. He cannot own a gun. Because anyone could be called up for service in a militia. Literally, if they just make the call, anyone who's able-bodied shows up to serve. So that's how the militias historically worked. So it is your responsibility as a private citizen to be armed and ready for militia service at any given moment. At least that's according to the original meaning behind the Second Amendment and what a militia was. Like, that's the historical context behind it. So I hope that addresses that well. Once again, there is no Bubba Joe's militia, and there is no right to overthrow the government, because right behind them calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, they also suppress insurrections, meaning that you cannot usurp the authority or will of the people by trying to overthrow the government, because that is an insurrection or rebellion. So I hope we kind of covered all the bases on that well. Honestly, that's a better explanation I think that's ever been given than all of those eggheads, Matthew, that they bring on like CNN, and they'll be like, what does a militia mean? And then you have like one guy who's arguing for like Bubba Joe's militia, and then another guy who's saying no one can own guns unless if you're in the National Guard. It's like, none of these are correct. It's like, none of those are correct at all. Like, by like the conventions of the day when this was written, like the understanding that I told you all is the closest that it actually gets to exactly what they really meant.
Yeah, you should have heard or you should hear the Supreme Court arguing about that while they're smacking on a ham sandwich. So what's a militia that you're talking about? It's like, oh man, I just don't know, man. Like sometimes, like it's just so many different ways to interpret this stuff. Like it really is. I'm not saying you're wrong, but you ask one person, what does it say? You ask the next person, you ask another person. Everybody's got a different take on it. And it's just some people intentionally misrepresent what it says because they want it to read a certain way. And then some people just genuinely believe it says something different. And I think they wrote it that way intentionally. So that way it could be somewhat flexible. And even that's in debate. Some people say it's you're supposed to have strict interpretation. Some people say you're supposed to have the flexible interpretation, or whatever it's called, where it's like a living document or something like that. I don't know. It's just a lot of different feelings about it.
But the way I understand it, I'll actually explain how I understand it. Take this as political or not, but this is largely how I've understood it, is that the federal government is not supposed to make a law abridging or stopping the ability of the citizenry to arm themselves in each respective state. So largely from what I'm understanding, if we were to interpret this the way I'm interpreting it, every single federal law on firearms saying, you have to have a tax stamp to have a machine gun and such things, those largely could be considered, at least by my interpretation, unconstitutional, because it's abridging the rights of the states to equip their militias, or for the citizenry to equip themselves to be ready for militia service. However, that does not stop the state governments and municipal governments from making their own laws and different kinds of excises on firearms. They could do that themselves. So the federal government cannot do that. But if, say, the state of California doesn't like machine guns and they ban them, the state of California actually does have the right to do that. But the federal government doesn't have a right to really make any overarching federal law applying to every state on firearms, at least from my understanding of it, because it seems as though it's quite clear, according to the Second Amendment, that this is more so a issue to be relegated to each state, so at a state level, more so than any sort of an overarching decision at a federal level.
Yeah, maybe so. And you're talking about Amendment 2, right?
Yeah, the Second Amendment, yeah.
Yeah, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And obviously, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In my opinion, that's pretty damn straightforward. But apparently, the courts over the decades and decades have interpreted that to mean you cannot bear certain arms without going through an extra process. And also, you can't bear these arms either, because these are just reserved for the military. So, it's just honestly like it only means what somebody interprets it to mean. If a court interprets this to mean you can't bear arms at all, it'll say they mean bear arms, like they're talking about it like an animal, like it's the arms of a bear. they could interpret it to mean that, and you simply lose the right to have guns in the first place, which is just crazy.
But
that's how stupid the interpretations have gotten.
But think about it. Think about it from my interpretation, because I feel like it makes a lot of sense. A well-regulated militia being necessary to security of a free state. Obviously, not speaking of the United States of America as a state. It's speaking of each individual state in that instance and its ability to raise its own citizenry in the defense of each respective state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, largely saying that the rights of the citizenries of those states to be able to raise arms or purchase their own arms and procure them to be ready to be called upon by their state to serve their state shall not be infringed by the federal government. That's what I'm getting from it. If the states do their own thing beyond that and limit the access to firearms or any other kinds of arms on their own, that's fine. That's a whole different ball game and largely on the state level. But the federal government shouldn't be really infringing on that at all, and largely ought to leave that to the states entirely.
Yeah, well, the state, to my understanding, states generally don't really get into, except for licensing. They do give you licenses to carry. That's one thing. And some states take that to the extreme where you have to go through like this insanely complex process to get licensed to get a firearm, which is, in my opinion, extremely unconstitutional. But they do it anyway because they've interpreted it to mean that. But say what now?
I would actually argue, man, that I don't really find like the extreme licensing things to be unconstitutional. I mean, if a state's doing it, then I think that's that's really up to the states. But the federal government can't. But if a state if the constituents want to vote for something like that, and then that gets passed into law in their state, and they make it insanely difficult to get a concealed carry license or something like that, I don't really think the Second Amendment really says anything at all about whether a state can infringe on those rights. I think it's more so speaking directly about the federal government really can't touch those rights or do anything with them.
Yeah, I think the problem is, though, I think you're reading into the definition of state too much. A state can mean a country, or it can mean like an individual, like a united state, like, for example, one of the states in the country, like Alabama. But the word state can, in the terms that I'm familiar with it, a state can be like, for example, the United States of America. That's a state in terms of like political science. So then you get into the definition of what is a state. And the Constitution is the overarching document. It trumps the state law. The Constitution is the law of the land. So this would be what would dictate what the states can even do. So I think the word state would have to be looked at. And just honestly, this is giving me like flashbacks to law school really badly. Honestly, it's just starting to really get to my nerves. I'm not gonna lie.
But here's my thing, Maddie. Here's my thing. Like, I'll give some historical context behind this, because like nowadays all of this is ambiguous, but if you know the historical context of the period that they were living in when they wrote this, it becomes a lot more clear. Militias were never raised by the federal government. Like, militias could be provided to the service of the federal government, but a militia was raised by the governor of a state or the governor of a colony during the pre-American times, during the colonial period. The militias were raised by the governor of that colony or the governor of the state in the earlier part of the United States of America's history. But if the federal government called upon that governor to raise a militia, the governor would raise the militia and provide those militias to the service of the federal government, but those militias were still under the authority of those state governors. With that in mind, this is not speaking about the state as in the United States of America like the federal government. This is speaking about the state as in an individual state. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Because on top of that, back then, it was entirely possible for a governor without any consent or authority from the president of the United States or the federal government could raise a militia on their own for any purpose that they saw fit and put it into service and then even send it into open warfare. I mean, it was quite often that governors on Indian frontiers back in the day would raise militias to make battle with the Indian tribes bordering their frontiers without the authority of the federal government or the president whatsoever.
So it turns out that this issue right here, the definition of a state, is extremely litigated, highly debated. And I figured it would be because that harkened back to law school. That, well, now what does that word mean? Because that could change the entire definition of what it means. It looks like in the Second Amendment, the word state generally refers to a nation or country rather than the individual states within a federal structure. So it's interpreted the way that generally I thought it was interpreted. And also, it refers to a well-regulated militia in the singular sense. It doesn't refer to a militia like in multiple militias. It's one militia, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, meaning the United States, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. So I think that's on a federal level. That's supposed to be like that, which is what's Trump's state law.
Okay, so there is a plural form of militia. Just want to make sure. But I would.
Is it militia?
It's militias. Interestingly enough, I thought it'd be like militia or something like that. But beyond that, I'm still sticking with my guns on my interpretation of this because, like, by a modern definition, sure. But the thing is, man, is that the United States of America speaks to the states. Almost in every single mention of a state, it's a state of the inside of the United States. I never really have heard the federal government spoken of as a state or the entire collective of states being spoken of as a state. Like, you know, and also on top of that, that doesn't really make any sense that this is speaking about the state and federal level, because the whole reason the Bill of Rights exists is because of the anti-federalists and them wanting to ensure that the states retain some power or control over themselves and the federal government can't just trample over them. I mean, that's quite obviously clear, especially when you look at the 10th Amendment, because it states that the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states. Once again, speaking about the states as states, not the country as a whole as a state, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So
why wouldn't it say? Why wouldn't it use the plural version of states in the Second Amendment? Like, go back up to the Second Amendment real quick. If it was referring to it like that, it would say the security of free states, because technically the states are free.
But a free state is proper. That's proper English. Like, you know, like if you say, oh, you know, like if you're like, yeah, you know, well, an army is an important thing to protect a nation. You don't say armies are an important thing to protect nations. Like you say an army is a good thing to protect a country. Even if you're talking about all of them in plural in the world, no one ever words it that way, and they wouldn't have worded it back then that way either.
Maybe so. Maybe so. This is why the debates exist, because, you know, some people interpret it certain ways. I was honestly trying to find some case law from the Supreme Court to actually see what they said in the most recent case about that, but I'm not finding it right off the bat. And unfortunately, I lost my subscription to Westlaw, so I can't pull it up. so I can't find it. And thankfully, I lost my subscription to that, so I don't have to look at it. But so it's just a huge debate about it, man. That's why. Those words, I tell you what, those words just are so highly debated, honestly.
Let's see. One second. I want to see if there's any other mention of state or states. Let's see. Or in the militia when it, well, there is a mention of it again, or in the militia in the Fifth Amendment. I've never actually read the Fifth Amendment, a lot before, because I always know that the Fifth, you know, you plead the Fifth, you don't have to incriminate yourself, but I've never really read it a lot recently. But let's see. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any case to be a witness. But also notice this, Matthew. Notice that there is this is important here. There is a differentiation in the Fifth Amendment between the Army and the militia, except in the cases arising in the land or naval forces, speaking of the Army and Navy of the federal government, or in the militia, speaking of the militia as a totally separate entity. Meaning that, like I was saying, the militias are raised by the governors of the states and then provided to the service of the federal government, but they're still under the authority of their governors. That was how it worked when the Constitution was originally written, and that's why there's a differentiation between land forces and the militia, even in the Fifth Amendment.
Maybe so. I'll be honest with you. That just all went over my head right there. It's like for some reason, I just didn't like really sponge that in.
Whoa, I mean, he might be a fast learner, but he's not sponging. But
I tell you.
anyways, we've been yapping on this too long. Honestly, for some reason, usually I would have found this to be torture. Tonight, I'm finding this to be interesting. Like, this is actually an interesting conversation. But anyways, with that, also, man, this one right here, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. I'm not going to lie, man. Sometimes I feel like excessive bail is posted kind of regularly these days. You know, like someone will do something and then they'll get like a $1 million bail. It's like, it's like, isn't that...
You can get it reduced with a good lawyer.
Yeah, but, usually that's just done commonly these days. Or there's, like, no bail at all. Like, you can murder, like, 5 people and someone gets, like, a $50 bail or something. It's like, man, honestly, man, the bail things, the bail system these days is just wild, depending on where you're at. You can get, like, no bail, or, like, very little bail. It's like a $50 bail for, like, killing 10 people. Or you can run a red light and get, like, a $500,000 bail. It's a little interesting with that. But anyways... With that, we have spoken plenty of the government and how it works, or at least how we believe it works. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Matthew Rod, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Matthew Rod, for that $50 support. That is a very large one of the largest ones of the night, and we appreciate it very much. And he threw in a super sticker, no comment, but the super sticker of the YouTube creature going out into the distance on that rocket right there, and it really went kaboom, like a boom tap. But thank you very much, Matthew, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you greatly for the support, Matthew Rod. He showed Little Rocket Man. He was flying into the distance on his little rocket. And I gotta say, we are massively appreciative of your support, Matthew. A wonderful thing. Thank you, Matthew. Everyone say thank you to Matthew. Not the one on the air, the one who threw in the super chat. The Matthew I have is great, but I really don't need him. I just happened to bring him onto the show because I like them. I like them as a friend. But beyond that, I gotta say thank you for the support, Matthew. Great support. Wonderful support. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. But Matthew here on the stream, Enforcer Matt, you're kind of like my Elon, but legalized co-host. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next. But huge thanks to you once again.
Legalized comedy. But anyways, seriously speaking, though, someone asked me in the chat, Anthony Menzano, he said, let's see here, he said, Matt, to be honest, some of these constitutional amendments need to be rewritten because the first few, they were written either during the Revolutionary War or during the Civil War. The thing is, Anthony, the truth is they don't really need to rewrite them because the courts just reinterpret them. And the reinterpretations can be so drastic that it basically creates brand new law. And courts do create law. That by reinterpreting existing written law, they can create new law without going through the legislature. Which is not the way it's supposed to work, but that's what they do. And that's the danger of having courts that reinterpret things so wildly and drastically, is they essentially usurp the process of the legislature and create their own law in their own court, which is crazy. And then it becomes precedent, and then people have to follow it. So no need to rewrite, really, even though it would be a good idea. But anyways, we are now moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Little Bear, who puts in a 50 as well. Another massive support, and thank you, Little Bear, for that $50 support. They said, you made me laugh over education. Take one from the chat, please.
Well, I gotta thank you so much for the support, and gotta say, I didn't expect that one. Didn't expect you to laugh, but if you laugh, you laugh. That's what I always say. We aren't running a laugh factory with Kramer up on the stage, but it's an interesting one. I will give it that. But beyond that, I do have to thank you greatly for the support. You've absolutely been helping this channel to keep on running, Little Bear. I gotta say, you're a little bear. And you know who else I call Little Bear? I call Putin a little bear. I call him a little one because he's like 5'4". I walked up to him. I said, wow, you're so little. You may as well be a little baby in a small pram. But he is a tiny little guy. I call him Little Putin. I call him a little poot. And he's just out there and he's doing his thing. He's invading Ukraine and doing all kinds of stupid stuff. But I do have to say, I thank you for laughing at education. I'm glad that you find it a laughing matter, because whenever I go up to any average American, I ask them, hey, can you read this 6th grade pamphlet on the Constitution, and then they cannot. I get a big laugh out of it because I always go, look, he cannot read. He must be from the backwoods or the inner cities. Either one. It can happen in both places. It really just depends. But beyond that, I do thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Little Bear as we call you, Little Bear. People have been saying, where's Little Bear? We've been thinking about creating a show about a little bear. Actually, that's already been done. That's Xi Jinping and Winnie the Pooh. But beyond that, I got to thank you greatly once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. It just wouldn't be possible. Would it, Matthew? Would this channel be possible without them? It wouldn't be possible. It just wouldn't be.
It really would not be possible without the likes of Big Bear. Thank you, Big Bear. We love Big Bear. When the bear comes in, all it wants is honey. It just wants some honey. That's all. Who do you know that just wants to get paid with food? Nobody. Everybody wants high wages. They want unions. Union, an old-fashioned word, union. You know, just you have to admire that word, union. But anyways,
Matthew, with that little impersonation, great impersonation. We love it. That's enough. Thank you. But I got to say, it's a wonderful thing, a wonderful impersonation. But Little Bear, your name is so little. We don't do things little in America. We do things bigly. And that bear just got 10 feet taller. But beyond that, a big thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. They just want honey, and baby, we got nothing but it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Indeed, I must say. But we are now going to get, in honor of Little Bear, that live chat question. And this one is going to go to Judy from the live chat, who said, who is still buying that Russian oil?
There are some countries that are buying it. Largely, India was buying it for a time, but from what we understand now, the People's Republic of China is a large purchaser still. There are a bunch of countries in Africa and also South America that largely buy the oil from the vessels, largely with kind of like a blind eye philosophy of they don't really care where it comes from. It's just that they get the oil that they're looking for, and so it's really just anyone who can buy the oil. Those are the people that those oil tankers go to. It's not anyone in particular too much these days. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Danny B. It is Chef Danny. Throw us a fierce elimination, and thank you very much, Danny, for that support. And also, by the way, he told me in the Discord that he was dealing with some very unhinged, uncouth people today, I must say. Ooh. And I was like, oh, that harkens back to the days when I used to have to deal with the uncouth people. Honestly, I feel for Danny. But he said, good evening, enforcers. Chef Danny here, and all I got to say is, what a day.
And I got to tell you, if you're dealing with crazy people like I used to deal with, oh, buddy, it had to have been a day. I got to thank you for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, though. And I hope that we've been able to make the day a little bit better. Hopefully, a little extra laugh here and there, and also some good news to hear has hopefully made the day slightly better. But hopefully tomorrow will be better. That's at least what we're going to say to ourselves, hoping that it is better. But I do thank you so much for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to sit here and have a fairly good day. We've had a fairly good day today. I was busy making that little video in the middle of the day that did okay. Like, it wasn't like, to be honest with y'all, today wasn't an exceptionally big news day, but it was all right. And a decent amount of people did watch the video. So we had a pretty okay day work, and I hate to hear that yours wasn't good, but hopefully tomorrow you have a great day, and we have a great day. Hopefully it'll be a win-win for us all. But still, huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is another very generous $50 donation, this time from Hokey Redneck, another channel legend. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that support, and thank you once again. And he said, do you think the market fluctuations are being manipulated? Oh, and also, I think TJ said a little overthrow now and then is a good thing, but not in law. Who's TJ?
I gotta say, overthrowing the government is not a good idea. I just gotta be honest, not a great idea.
Not a good idea, no.
Some people have tried it, and I've always went, that's not a great idea, not a great idea. Some people tried it back in the Whiskey Rebellion. They tried to overthrow the government over whiskey getting it more expensive. People were really touchy back then. Nowadays, you can make the whole economy stop running. People just complain a little bit on Twitter. Back then, you could make whiskey 10 cents more expensive, and they were ready to skin you. Kind of a crazy thing. But beyond that, I do have to say that The government getting overthrown from time to time, not really a great thing. Not really for that. You know, it's better to just kind of sit back and vote in the ballot box. That's how you're supposed to do it here. But beyond that, what was the first part of their super chat, Matthew? I totally forgot it. I've got to hear it again.
They said, do you think that the market fluctuations are being manipulated?
I'd have to tell you that I, personally me, since I'm doing them, I would say no, they are not being manipulated. But have you bought my crypto coin? I have a great crypto coin. It's a wonderful coin. People have been going, wow, that's a coin. And it went booming like a boom town, and then it busted all over everyone, as they said. Kind of like that Stormy Daniel, but beyond that, beyond that, I do have to say thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running. I don't really know if it's market interference or manipulation, as they call it. I know a lot of manipulators. I've had 3 wives. I'd say that 2 of them were manipulators. 1 of them wasn't. She'll become one if I divorce her. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to get to those hard-hitting questions that the fake news won't ask me. They're always asking me questions, but they never ask good questions. They're always asking things like, how will we eat? Where's the money going? Stupid things like that. I don't really like questions like that. I like better questions like, did you enjoy your trip to the golf course? And how is Pete? Is he drinking a lot? I like those kinds of questions. They're a lot better. And I also like the question of, am I going to stick cash Bedell onto someone? I really like questions like that. And the answer is yes. It's only coming.
Wait, we just uncovered in a brand new investigation, the Pentagon was spending $1 million a day on Hennessy. Legalize Hennessy. You
gotta love the Hennessy. You gotta love the Hennessy. You know what they say? Spinning the block, sipping on Henny, rolling down the window, giving them the spenny. You gotta say it's a great day out there in the Bronx. It's a wonderful day in the Bronx. I always thought about opening up a hotel in the Bronx. Great name, Bronx. Very, very good sounding. But the problem is I was near to New Rochelle, and I dated this girl named Rochelle, and she was very nice.
Wait a minute. They forgot to tell you that don't drink so much Hennessy. It's not good for your liver. It sends in cirrhosis of the liver. You don't want that. So lay off the Hennessy and stuff. And just remember, if you need to study some more, there's always some of that, that black tar. Not really. Don't touch that stuff. It's terrible. But anyways, you have roadkill anybody?
Oh, RFK, he's always talking about that black tar, folks, black tar. But, speaking of black tar, one thing that we haven't put is black tar in the interstates lately. Those are looking a little decrepit. We have been thinking about some alternatives to black tar, and we've been thinking that maybe the best alternative would be, I don't even know. I was trying to come up with something there. I don't even know. Maybe we'll just cover it with asphalt. I do like some ass, and it's not my fault, so maybe asphalt would be the greatest thing to do. That would be the nicest thing to put on the interstates. We'll put them all over. It would be a great thing. People will be going, wow, that's some great asphalt. That's a wonderful one. I love it. I love to see it. But beyond that, I do have to say a big thank you once again to the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now, folks. We wouldn't be here right now. We just wouldn't be able to keep this running. They try and keep us down. They try and cancel us, but we're uncancelable. We just cannot stop. We'll not stop. And we're going to keep this thing rolling, but we got to get on to the next one, because if we don't do it, then there's this guy called the manager. His name is Anthony Studebaker, very nasty guy. He has beat me before behind the scenes, giving me a black eye, a nasty black eye. It was a bad black eye. People were going, wow, that is the worst black eye we've ever seen. And I couldn't agree less with him. It was a very bad one. I wince every time he comes in the room. He takes off the belt every time, and you're not sure if he's going to beat you with the belt or pull his pants down. But beyond that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we're now moving on to our next one here, and this one is going to go to none other than, guess who? This one goes to CDRO Man 11, and thank you very much, CDRO Man, for that support and helping to keep this channel running. And they said Ukraine won't believe any promises the U.S. make over security. They believe the U.S.'s promise in the 90s when they gave up their nukes, and we see now what that was worth. In that sense, the U.S. already failed its debt to Ukraine.
And I thank you for the support, but the thing is that Ukraine doesn't really have a choice, because if they don't want to believe us, then what alternative do they have? That's like, I see where you're coming from with that, and maybe that's the case, but it's not really like they have a choice, because it's not really like anyone else is going to come and try and guarantee their security, except for the good old US of A. And so with that, I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Gunfox, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support. And it's good to see you once again. And he does have a day in history for us today. He said on April the 13th, 1970, Apollo 13, 4/5 of the way to the moon, was crippled when a tank containing liquid oxygen busted. The astronauts managed to return safely. And in 1743, Thomas Jefferson was born in a Virginia colony.
And very interesting to hear, and I thank you for sharing that and helping this channel to keep on running, Gunfox60. And I gotta say, Apollo 13 was a mission I know of quite intimately, Gunfox, because I watched a movie with Tom Hanks in it, and it actually was a pretty good movie. I actually liked that one. But look at that panel that got blown off, man, on the Apollo command module. That was quite a large panel that got blown off there.
That was a big one. Wasn't that the one where Tom Hanks was freaking out?
Yeah, that was the one where they made like the carbon scrubber with the socks and the box and everything. You know, it was that one.
Yeah. I think that, I remember that. Tom Hanks was just, Tom Hanks was lucky that he made it back in that capsule. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that was a tough one.
He was very lucky. Some people said he's not going to make it. He made it, and then he went on to become Woody in Toy Story. Woody in Toy Story, folks. Some people have been saying there's too much Woody around here. I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe that one was going a little too far. But beyond that, I do have to say, Apollo 13, crazy mission, again, folks. But beyond that, I got to say, in 1743, Thomas Jefferson was born. Crazy time in America, crazy time. He was born in Virginia. And he died in Virginia, I believe. He built a mansion. It was called Montevallo. Montevallo, it sounds kind of like a cheese. But beyond that, it's a very interesting mansion. Not really that big, but it is a very interesting place. Let me pull it up. Montevallo. Where the hell is it? Where is Montevallo? Montevallo, Virginia. Come on. I cannot pull it up. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to make it possible. But beyond that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, the next one goes to Mr. Lunchtime, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime, for that $20 of lunch money, and we appreciate that very much. And he said, great work, guys, and please take a question from the chat with Enforcer Matt reading the question in Musk style. Thank you. Stay touched, my friends. And we will grab a live chat question, and it shall be read exactly in that style. So the question in honor of Mr. Lunchtime, Mr. Lunchtime, time for sandwiches. This one goes to, let me try to focus and actually get one real quick. Let's see here. Let's see here. This one's going to go to Axel K, like a car. Axel said, do we know how much U.S. military aid still needs to be delivered, like hospitals, for the last administration?
Legalized warfare. Legalized
deliveries.
It's only like a couple of billion. It's like maybe I think like 3 billion or less. It's not a large amount. So most of the support, the military support that we sent, out of the $60 billion that was approved, I think 57 billion has made it into Ukraine. So a substantive amount of it. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know. And I do thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running and sponsoring that live chat, Mr. Lunchtime. And I hope you all like that read off of that question. It was a very interesting read off. But anyways, we are on to.
There's only one problem with this super chat. His name is Mr. Lunchtime, but it's midnight. Legalized comedy.
Go on, Elon. Go balance the forks in your fingers. Like, go have fun. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Look at this fork creation. Beautiful creation with forks. Take a fork. Have one. I guess you could say, fork you. But anyways.
I guess you could say, I don't give a fork.
But anyways, moving on from the insanity. This one goes to Marion Demert, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $20 support. And we appreciate that very much. And Marion said, Slav Ukraine, and Hero Slava.
Hey, and Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava. And I thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemer, and helping this channel to keep on running tonight, because you are an old guard and a channel legend, and we're massively appreciative of you always being here every single night. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Flash1, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Flash, as well, for that support. And it's good to see you once again, by the way. It's been a minute since you've been in the chat. And it's good to see you in the live chat. They said, hey there, I know the war is bad, but I get the news here. And there's always a lighthearted approach on the show, and keep it up. A live chat question, please.
Hey, and I got to thank you so much for the kind words, Flash, and the support. And I'm glad to hear that we keep it lighthearted, keep folks kind of laughing a little bit, hopefully. I hope that we do. But I do thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Great to have you around tonight, and I thank you so much for the massive support. And we will make sure to keep it up. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And before we move on to the next one, what the hell are you laughing at, man? You're about to make me start laughing.
Let's see. I don't know if I can read this. I don't know if this is offensive to people. Every term under the sun now is offensive to somebody. So I don't want to read something out. People are going to be like, "Oh my God, why do you say that?" Look at the chat said by Games Green Coffee. That's the one I was laughing at the whole time. Read that one for yourself. I'm not sure if that's an appropriate term or not.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. I don't know. Like, dude, honestly, man, there are a lot of people out there who've got too soft a skin, but I would read that one if I knew that we were like clear to read it and we weren't going to get flack for it. I would read that one. That's honestly hilarious. But anyway,
is this a bad word? Let's see here. It says on Wiktionary, slang, derogatory, offensive. Yeah, I think I'll probably pass on probably reading that one off. Yeah, but anyways, if you saw it in the live chat, you see it. It's not a terrible word, by the way. It's just like it's a word describing something about Elon's condition, I think. So I'll just like refrain from saying that. But anyways, moving on to that live chat question from Flash. This one is going to go to, let's see here, Don Bignon. Who says, what about the story of the captain of the boat being Chinese, the one that was captured by Estonia? Does that show any collusion between them if true?
It's interesting because I think the captain of the Evanton was Russian, and it was like an all-Russian crew. It was like an all-star crew, like from what I remember. But as far as your question is going, I don't know if it would show any collusion or not. Might be a stretch to say that it does, because there's a decent amount of culpable deniability that would be involved in a thing like that. So I doubt it. But you could possibly make a pretty convincing argument that there is some sort of collusion or conspiracy going on between the two, possibly. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, or at least kind of explore the options a little bit. But I do thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pete Hegseth, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support. They said, this is in their words, we deported the missing viewers.
I gotta tell you, I don't know how to respond to that one, because it kind of sounds political, but it kind of doesn't. And Matthew just read that out for the whole world to hear. Great job, Matthew, great job. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, and I don't know, because like our viewership actually isn't that bad now. It's like almost up to 60,000 views over the whole stream, which honestly isn't that bad. We've had a couple of nights like that recently, and it'll probably get up to around like 80 or 90,000 views once everyone watches it now that it's over. So I don't know what's going on with the viewership number. I think YouTube's underreporting tonight, but I do thank you once again for the support. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Nightmare Before Christmas, for that support. They said Kellogg has been having the wrong Frosted Flakes, if he thinks that map is a good idea. And you can take a question from the chat.
I didn't get the joke until I heard map, and then I was like, oh, I was like, okay. But yeah, that honestly was appeasement to me, what that map looked like, and even still the Russians won't accept it, which is the funniest part about it. But I do thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and they did ask for that live chat question, so we still grabbed that one. And this one shall go to Little Bear, who said, Matt, I think you were right. It was Japan dumping them bonds. Why would they do that? And that's still the speculation. I haven't seen any definitive proof that it was either Japan or China dumping the bonds. Somebody was, and the speculation is it's probably China or it was Japan doing it. And I would tend to believe it was more likely than not it was probably China, because they have a reason to do that, to spike the interest rates in the United States to try to hurt the U.S. administration's plans, because the U.S. administration is trying to get interest rates down. So China's trying to counteract that by dumping the treasury bonds, which causes the interest rate to go up. because it increases yields, if I'm understanding that correctly. But I don't think there was any definitive proof it was Japan, but they might have been doing it too. It's possible. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's possible. Honestly, Matthew's answer went on long enough that I forgot what the question was. So I'm a little bit lost.
Was it Japan dumping them bonds, or why would they do that?
Oh, who knows? I mean, they might be dumping them because they might think they could possibly be worthless, or they could be doing them as retaliation because Japan has a pretty export-heavy kind of an economy. So they could have been doing it as retaliation because, friendships only go so far, but when you start to affect people's bottom lines, people get nasty fast. So that could be it. But once again, we don't know if it was them or not. But still, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pete Hexeth once again, who puts in a 10 and says, "I love you guys."
Hey, and I thank you so much, Mr. Smart Pete Hexeth, and I thank you for loving us greatly. We love all of y'all here in the LSA, each and every one of you, and I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now. What do you say about a lumpy pillow? With that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Howie once again, who puts in a 10 this time. And thank you very much, Howie, for that support. He said a shout out to Pete, who warned me about sitting next to Matt S. in one of those golf carts at the resort. I don't know what that means, by the way. I have a feeling that's an inside joke of some sort.
I don't know what that means either, actually. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I guess some jokes were not meant to be understood. And with that, we are on to the next.
And our next one goes to Ryguy SR, who puts in a 10 and says, "Thanks for being awesome, Enforcers and LSA."
And thank you for being awesome and helping us to keep staying awesome, because your support's helping us to stay on air. So that way we can continue to be news reporters and goofy goobers all in one go. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a 10. He said, did you guys see that refinery fire out near Khabarovsk yesterday?
I think I did. It's just that I don't think we reported on it because, I'll be honest, I looked at it, I was like, I can't tell if the Ukrainians did that or not, so I just skipped it and moved on. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you, let's give her support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Buzz Blades, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Buzz, for that support. He said, "Thank you for all the hard work, Enforcer Matt, for the coffee fund, and take one from the chat." And thank you,
Buzz. And thank you, Buzz. Buzz! I can't do it like Toy Story. I was going to try and do it like that. I've failed. But I do thank you for the support. I thank you for enjoying our hard work and supporting the coffee fund. And we will make sure to get a live chat in honor of Buzz. What do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Dalton LMAO, who says, "Do you guys think the trade war between China and the United States increases the chances of a Taiwanese invasion from the Chinese? And thanks, y'all. And yee-haw."
I think it does. Honestly, I think that it actually is increasing the chance just because they aren't really being held back by any economic incentives anymore. So even if the chances are low, I still think they're increasing because of this. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Buzz, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tim Morgan, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Tim, for that support. He said, "Question for the Enforcer, Matt. You load 16 tons. What do you get?"
Another day older and deeper in debt.
Explain that to me.
It's a song.
It's a song? Sung by who?
Sung by Ernie Ford.
Henry Ford?
Ernie Ford. Let me pull it up.
I'm sorry, Tim. This one fell on my ears like the wrong way because I just don't know who this is.
This guy.
It's Walt Disney.
Yeah, pretty much. Or it's Howard from the Andy Griffith Show. But he was the guy who sang it, and it was a good song. It was a good song. It was about coal miners and how their lives sucked. It was a great song, honestly. Those miners' lives might have been sucking, but I'll tell you what, this guy wasn't. But it was a good song. But that was the answer to the question right there. What?
What do you say? Say that again.
The miners' lives might have sucked, but this guy wasn't.
Okay, I wasn't sure what I think my brain might be getting tired or something. The first time I wasn't sure what I heard when you said that. I was like, wait a minute, what? And I'm like, go again? Like, say it again? But anyways, I got
Go
you now.
again. Go again. What do you mean? What do you mean go again? But anyways, that's the answer to
I've never
your-
heard this song, by the way. Like, I've never heard this song at all. That's why I fell on deaf ears right there, Tim, because I've never heard of that song. But thank you though for that.
So these are the lyrics. And so it's pretty much saying, like, I'm a coal miner. That's like the whole first stanza. And then the second stanza is like, oh, geez, my job sucks. My back hurts. They don't pay me in real money. So, like, I'm indebted to the company forever. I've been working forever. I'm probably going to be working until I die, all that kind of a thing. And then it just repeats the chorus. It pretty much is just like, I'm a coal miner and my whole life sucks. That's literally like the whole song, pretty much.
Interesting. That sounds very good. Also, recently viewed songs "Cults" by Something Lily. What the hell were you? What the hell are you listening to?
What? Wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. What did it say I was listening to? Hold up.
Said recently listened to songs or something like that. It said "Cults" by something Lily or something like that. It's
Hold
like,
up.
what the hell? Cults.
I've never listened to anything called Gilded Lily by Colts. Why the hell does it say I looked at that 2 weeks ago?
Bro.
I'm gonna have to go look at that because I never looked at I've never heard of a Gilded Lily. So I'm gonna have to go look at that because I've never heard of that before. And also, why does it say I looked at that 2 weeks ago? I don't listen to music like that. Like, I listen to like all my music on like playlists on YouTube, and it's usually like military music.
Interesting. That's something else right there. Cults. They said cults.
They said
cults.
they said there were cults out there. They said it was a Gilded Lily. Tom Cruise, Tom Cruise was out there. We're not going to say too much of those creepy people called Scientologists are going to chase us down. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Jay Bagwell, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jay, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And Jay says, with all this gun talk, the Beretta 93R.
Yeah! This is a cool pistol.
Oh, that's pretty cool looking, actually. I like that. What is that little piece sticking out the front?
Bro, they call that thing the shank. and you use it to cut them up. I actually don't know what that
really
is. I don't know what it is, actually. Let's go look at it. Let's go.
Like a kickstand.
Selective fire machine pistol. Oh,
what?
Designed and manufactured. Let's see. Let's see here. 93. What's that little thing? Let's see. The pistol is fitted with a collapsible angled foregrip. So it's not a knife. It's an angled foregrip.
Interesting. Is there a picture of somebody like actually holding this? Because I'd like to see them actually using that.
It looks like there was one, but it was a thumbnail, so we're gonna try and find it.
Oh, there he is, right there.
That is crazy. That is actually
I'll be
cool.
honest with you, that is kind of like nuts, actually. That's actually not a bad idea, actually. Like, that seemed like you control the recoil pretty well.
Dude, and it's got like a little stock and everything. That's actually pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually a pretty cool little thing right there. Jay, you always have an incredibly interesting suggestion for. Dude, what uniform is this guy wearing, man? Like, I saw the brim, I was like, this thing was not around for World War II, mind you. So is this like the Italian like gendarmerie or something maybe like?
It could be the fella that went to Argentina.
No, no, man, it couldn't be. Bro, is that the Terminator? That is the Terminator's gun. Well, not the Terminator. Sorry, RoboCop's gun.
That's a Steam Workshop image.
That is RoboCop's gun, dude. RoboCop gun. Let me go pull it up. RoboCop gun. RoboCop gun. It's a Beretta 93. Never knew it, but it's a Beretta 93. That's actually pretty neat. I was always wondering in the movie, how does he have a machine pistol, and what is it? And apparently it's a Beretta 93. I thought it was actually a Beretta 92. Apparently it's the cooler version. So that's neat to know. But thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jay, because that was an incredibly neat little machine pistol right there. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Monster Lab, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Monster Lab, for that support. He said, Enforcer's redneck mechanic voice is too funny. We need to manufacture simple, repairable cars again, instead of disposable garbage sold today in LSA. And also, Monster Lab, can you believe that someone had the audacity to call the Southern accent racist earlier? the clown called the Southern accent, which is literally the accent of the entire Southern United States, racist. How stupid. How stupid was that? But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, they should have heard us in our younger years, man. Like when we actually had Southern accents, like for real, when we were like kids. Man, they would have said that we were like a turbo racist or something like that. Like, well, boy, you must be real racist. And they're talking in that voice, cultural appropriation. Man, it's like, how the hell can we culturally appropriate our own culture? We're from the South.
Yeah, I don't even understand that, man.
I don't even get it. I think that person might have been a little stupid. But beyond that, I gotta thank you for enjoying this accent. I put a lot of hard work and effort, long hours into it. Look at them soft hands. But beyond that, I gotta thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I think that they all make them cars damn usable. Because I open up the hood on mine, it looks like a giant sheet of plastic. I'm like, my God, how am I supposed to get to the engine on that thing? I honestly wouldn't be able to work on an engine anyways. I'm kind of like mechanically illiterate. But beyond that, I gotta say, that's just absolutely damn ridiculous. You can't even work on your car, damn it. But beyond that, I gotta thank you once again for the support and helping this channel keep on running, because dang it, you keep this thing possible, and I got to thank you once again for the support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't be able to say, hey, what? But beyond that, thank you once again. Thank you once again. God bless your soul. But with that, it's time for us to move on to that next one, because it's starting to get long-winded than that. By golly, I want to sleep. I'm getting like insomnia these days. I can only sleep for like 5 hours at a time. I'm like freaking exhausted all day, every day. I sit there, I tell you, man, I'll tell you what, I'm about to start trying to knock myself out to get to sleep. But what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so our next one here goes to Jack Ray, who puts in the 5. Thank you very much, Jack, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. Jack says, so Estonia made a Djibouti call to find out if that oil tanker was legit.
They sure as hell did. They called down to Djibouti. They said, is this your booty? And they said, that ain't our booty. You can get it. And so with Estonia, they got that booty. They got that booty, and they pulled it in real good. But beyond that, I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. That was a good one. That was a good one. But with that, thank you once again. We're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in the $5 donation. And thank you very much, Burnaby, for that $5 support, and we appreciate it very much. They said this is Magyar's boat now.
I gotta tell you, there is Magyar's boat now. I'll tell you what, they go out there and they go find the boat and they go get it, and they're gonna grab that boat and they're gonna take it. They're gonna take that thing out of the lake, damn it, because it's what we do down here. We take them out to the lake, put a little cooler on them. We always get them little Yeti coolers. We really like those little Yeti coolers. And then we take them out there in that boat, and then we get arrested by the water police because they said that we were driving a boat drunk. But I ain't driving a boat, officer. I'm just sailing this thing. The hell are you talking about? Beyond that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Jack, for that support and supporting the channel so very much. And we appreciate that, of course, to the ends of the earth. Jack says, can't pirates just steal these undocumented Shadow Fleet ships as they're unofficially covered? The Russians couldn't retaliate officially.
Technically, they could, but that's surmising that a pirate's got intelligence enough to spot a Shadow Fleet tanker, and that's also surmising that there's pirates out there anymore. And there ain't really a lot of pirates out there anymore, at least near major shipping channels. Last time we had pirates, there were Somali pirates, and they made this good movie off of them called Captain Phillips. And right after they got done making that movie, they killed off the last of them, and the pirates just kind of died off, you know. But beyond that, I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it wasn't for folks like you, how the hell would we be? Y'all know we wouldn't be here. But beyond that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Thomas D'Orazio, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Thomas, for that $5 support and helping to keep the channel running right along. Thomas says, keep up the good work.
Oh, we're going to be keeping up that good work, boss man. We're going to be keeping it up, I'll tell you what. I got to thank you for the support and helping to support our work and keeping it going. Because unlike our boys down there in the plumbing industries and the plumbing unions and all, hell, I don't even think we have plumbing unions. We got like 7 plumbers here in Alabama. Not enough for a union, but they can sure as hell price gouge. Yeah, but beyond that.
Oh, giggity.
Oh, giggity goo. But beyond that, I got to thank you for the support. Help this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Oh man, we wouldn't be able to keep up that great work. We wouldn't be able to keep the lights on. Our children would starve, and we would not be down here having a good time. I'll tell you that. But beyond that, thank you once again. Bless your soul. We're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Gunfox, once again, who puts in a 5 this time. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. He said, in 1861, at the start of the Civil War, Fort Sumter in South Carolina fell to Confederate forces.
Why, hell, I gotta tell you what, that damn Fort Sumter, I'll tell you something, I'll tell you Sumter, that damn be Fort Sumter, I'll tell you what. Let me go pull up that damn Fort Sumter. What the hell we got here? There it is, Fort Sumter. Where was that? That was at the mouth of Charleston Harbor, down in South Carolina. You said North Carolina. You used to do what I do when I was a kid. I used to call that damn thing Fort Sumter, North Carolina. I was wrong. It's Fort Sumter, South Carolina, and they built a giant pit in it for World War I artillery guns and all. But beyond that, I got to thank you for the support, Gunfox, and sharing that, because that was the beginning of the Civil War, and it sure as hell wasn't civil. I don't know if y'all saw it, but people were getting shot. Man, they called it civil. Now, I don't know what they was doing when it was really civil or when it was really bad, but hell, it was tough when it was civil back then, I'll tell you. But beyond that, I gotta thank you once again for the support. And I don't know what they was doing back then. I mean, you know, when you think about it, if that was a civil war, what the hell did an uncivil war look like? That must have been nasty. And on top of that, what the hell did a civil family look like? Were they just going around beating on each other? Well, like, what was going on back then? Hell if I know. But beyond that, I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because as my papa always said, if the lights ain't on, you're getting sold off. Beyond that, thank you once again. We're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Simon Condon, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Simon, as well, for that support. He said, I can't believe you missed the as big as Rosie O'Donnell reference in last night's impressions and Slav Ukraine and LSA.
Did I miss Rosie O'Donnell? There's no way to miss her. She is as big as Saturn. When you look up into the sky, you go, look, there's the moon, and there's Rosie O'Donnell right next to it, running into it. Now, we could put Rosie O'Donnell up there in space, get rid of the moon. We would have greater tides. We would have the biggest tides ever seen on this planet. People would be going, wow, the tides are coming in. They really would be coming in, and Rosie O'Donnell would be on the way out. Oh, my goodness. I got to tell you what, there will be something to see that I can't believe I missed it. I totally forgot where it was even at. Where was it? Where was Rosie O'Donnell? I don't even know. But beyond that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, the lights wouldn't be able to keep on, and we wouldn't be able to have Bubba here. Bring Bubba back up, and thank you once again, Mr. President. And with that, we're on to the damn next one.
All right, the next one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5 and says, hello, enforcers from an Oklahoma supporter and trusted news, LSA, and Slav Ukraine.
And I got to thank your soul for being from Oklahoma. It used to be called Tornado Alley. Now it's just called Flat. Now we're called Dixie Alley because now we get all the shit. We're like the poorest place in the country. Now we get hit every year with damn devastating tornadoes. Really adds to the whole looks like desolation here kind of a thing. But beyond that, I got to thank you once again for the support because we love to know that we got folks out there in Oklahoma and that y'all are sitting there supporting our show and really liking it. And so with that, I got to thank you once again. And with that, I've been told not to do overdo actions by Anthony Studebaker, and I honestly was starting to think maybe I was overdoing it, boss man. But honestly, I'm overdoing it, and the government's going to come and get me here because they don't like me to kid around too much, and Anthony Studebaker's going to beat me. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one also goes to Kyle, who puts in another 5. He says, have you seen the size of the Belarus border guard hat? That massive sun protector and rain protector is ridiculously huge.
Let's see. Belarus border guard hat. Belarus border guard. Oh my God! This guy is getting. What in the hell? That is ridiculous.
Dear Lord. That's like a rug.
Dude, that honestly is like one of that's like those coats that the ratchet girls used to wear in school.
What?
You know, the ones that were fuzzy that looked like the Grinch?
Not really. I'll be honest with you, no.
What the hell? What do you mean? I'll pull up a reference after the stream. But still.
Are you talking about the Cookie Monster like hoodie?
No, I'm talking about those damn jackets they wear that were made out of like that shower rug material stuff, and it would be like green. You don't remember those?
No.
I remember seeing them every time, and I would look at it. I'd honestly stare at those jackets. I'd be like, that looks like a shower rug. Like, I was always just blown away by that. But anyways, with that, I thank you for sharing this. I've never seen the Belarusian border guards hat before, but that is one hell of a hat. It's so wide that the brim actually, like, droops. Well, actually, yeah, it droops on the Kazakh one and the Belarusian one. That's actually pretty stupid looking. But still, big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Marc-Andre Burnett, also Plazant, who put in a 3, and Uncovered Cube, who put in a 2. And thank you all three very much, Mark, Plazant, and Uncovered Cube, for the support, and once again, helping to keep the channel running. And with that, y'all three are going to be bringing us into the live chat questions of the night. It is now that time. So, of course, we will jump into our Morse code decoders first, and we had the entire roster, literally the whole roster, like a football team. Punt it, coach, punt it. But the whole roster tonight was Close Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps for Royal Fluffiness, Airball Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code says, what's this all going on with Russia getting attacked everywhere? They're looking weak. LLC, LSA.
And ding, ding, that's the sound of money, and y'all hit it dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct for the 1,143rd day of the war, because y'all continue to get that correct time and time again. And goodness gracious, it's about time for us to get into them live chats proper. Due to time constraints, thanks to me yapping, because I love to hear myself talk. Some people wonder, is he a narcissist? No, but I sure as hell love to hear my voice. I'm just kidding, by the way. We had so much fun kidding around and joking with y'all and seeing the reactions of the chat to some of the jokes and bits that we had that we came up with on the spot. We went over time considerably. So we're going to be grabbing 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jeff Omar, who says, any word on negotiations with Iran? And my money is on Iran just stalling for time to test a nuke.
So we are actually going to negotiate with Iran. The president has said that he might be able to agree to a great deal, and honestly, that is like the weakest thing I've ever heard. Like, I actually thought we were about to start smearing them, like, you know, on the pavement with the armed forces and actually deal with this major threat. No, we're actually going to let them buy themselves some time and attempt to negotiate with them, which is honestly the worst move. I actually was about to be saying, like, for once, I was going to be like, wow, actually, we did the good move with Iran. We actually, you know, dealt with them aggressively, like I've been saying we should. No, we're going to go about it the weak way. We're going to go about it by trying to talk to them like that ever worked before. Also, if we're going to talk to them now and strike a deal with them, what, look, I'm not getting political here. I just call out hypocrisy when I see it. Now he's acting like a deal to limit their nuclear development to only peaceful means might actually be a good move. Then why was he the one to rip up the original nuclear deal we had with Iran that literally said that very same thing? Like, that does, like that the first nuclear deal was stupid, and then him ripping it up and then doing nothing after that was stupid. Then we were moving on right here to actually dealing with Iran and denuclearizing them once and for all, because we know now that we can't trust them. If we have a deal or not, they're going to develop a nuke. And we're actually going to deal with them. That was the right move, the right answer to this whole thing. And now we're going to go, you know what? Maybe making a deal with them would be good. It's like, no. We're already moving too far. We've got 3 aircraft carriers in the area and tons of assets and personnel. Let's just press forward with what we need to do. So I honestly think this is going to go nowhere, and it's going to give the Iranians time, and that's something we need to not let them have, is more time. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for the interesting question. And with that, I think we are on to the final question of the night, Matthew. Am I not mistaken?
No, we have 2 more to go.
Oh, and so we're on to the second to last question of the night.
So this one goes to Knox Date, who says, have you guys seen or heard of the helicopter crash? And what are you guys thinking what happened mid-flight for it to crash? And we did hear of the helicopter crash. What was interesting about it is on board was the 2 Siemens executives, which is a pretty large German company, and their family. And it looked like from the video, it just looked like, to my layman's view, that the rotor assembly came off the helicopter. That's what it looked like. It looked like the entire top of the helicopter came off, which was insane. And also, it's a little suspicious that the Siemens executives were on board that helicopter that crashed in such a catastrophic way. So a real tragedy, but I'm curious to see what an investigation is going to uncover on that one. But Enforcer, what say you?
It was a real tragedy. We've been hearing some interesting things. Apparently, the helicopter only had 15 minutes of fuel on board when it took off. Apparently, the tail rotor and the main rotor came off, like just detached from the fuselage, and it led to the deaths of the 6 people on board, the 2 Siemens executives and their family, including their children. So, an incredibly unfortunate tragedy, but I honestly do not know what to make of it, and I really like to wait to see what an NTSB investigation concludes. Because I'm very interested as to why that happened. Because usually those tourist helicopter companies like that around New York, they're fairly safe. They really don't have any crashes. So to see one have a crash like that, and it was a catastrophic failure that led to the crash, I don't know why that would happen, especially with those kinds of VIPs on board the helicopter. So a little bit interesting. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Richard, who said, since the 30 days of ceasefire has passed today, what are the chances of Ukraine restarting the attacks on Russian energy?
Oh, very high. I mean, like they've already been doing that. They've already been hitting like Russian oil refineries and stuff. These Russians had already violated the ceasefire beforehand. So, yeah, they're right back to business. They're going to get back to slamming them, whamming them, and blamming them. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to give a massive shout out to the 60,000 people who watched the stream from beginning to end. The alleged 7.8 thousand people who were here. I think we had a higher number, but I do thank you all so much once again for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit that like button, and please, folks, make sure to subscribe. We love to have y'all here. We really do. Make sure to stick around a little. But still, with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army, and the Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for once again joining us once again tonight on day 1143 of the news. And of course, we'll be seeing you all tomorrow on the Short War Video midday if there is enough news to cover, and the next nightly war news stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. But with that, thank you to all 60,000 plus people that joined us tonight. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and good night.